Okay, all right. So I'd like to welcome everyone watching on ITV and via live stream and call the February 9th, 2021 regular meeting to order with all board members present via Zoom webinar. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, can we get a motion to adopt today's agenda?
So moved.
So moved by Trustee Beiser, seconded by Vice President Whitehurst Payne. We'll go in order. Trustee Patterson.
Aye.
Trustee Whitehurst Payne.
Aye.
Trustee Bozzo.
Aye.
Trustee McQuarrie.
Aye.
Trustee Beiser.
Aye.
And Barrera, aye. Okay, today's meeting of the Board of Education is a business meeting that is conducted in public. In compliance with the California Department of Public Health and County of San Diego directives prohibiting large public gatherings during the coronavirus outbreak, the Board of Education is accepting public testimony via Zoom webinar for tonight's meeting. Speakers will be able to provide testimony at the beginning of the appropriate agenda item or at the end of the meeting for non-agenda public comment. When your name is called, you will be allowed to speak. Please unmute yourself at that time. If you hear your name called and are unable to unmute yourself, we will call the next speaker. Once all speakers have been called for the item, your name will be called again, at which point we'd ask you to unmute yourself. If there are multiple anonymous or same name entries, please raise your hand so you can be identified. Your patience is appreciated as we work out this new system for public comment. Okay, we will move to item C1, which is our student presentation and from Burbank Elementary School in District D. So I'd be proud to ask our area superintendent for the San Diego High Cluster, Mitzi Marino, who will introduce our principal, Veronica Maxwell from Burbank.
Good evening. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Superintendent Martin, Board President Barrera, and trustees. My name is Mitzi Marino. As stated, I'm the Area 5 Superintendent, and tonight I have the honor of introducing the Burbank Elementary student presentation. At the heart of Burbank Elementary are brilliant students, incredible families, and exciting learning opportunities. Under the leadership of Ms. Maxwell, and with the support of a dedicated team of teachers, the students at Burbank are making steady academic gains each and every year. More and more students are successful academically because the school team is dedicated to building strong learning communities by nurturing the development of the whole child and by explicitly teaching school-wide scholarly behaviors. It is my pleasure to introduce the amazing school principal who builds unity through community, Veronica Maxwell.
Thank you so much, Ms. Marino. Good evening, Superintendent Martin, Interim Superintendent Jackson, governing board members, and staff. Thank you very much for this opportunity to highlight the incredible work that Burbank Elementary has been doing around our students' social emotional health. Please enjoy this video presentation that my school put together. And so I believe at this point, I can go ahead and share my screen. Is that right?
Yes, that is correct.
I will do that right now. And here we go. Hello, my name is Veronica Maxwell, and I am the proud principal of Burbank Elementary School. As you can see from our new logo, our Burbank community remains strong, no matter the distance. Some quick facts about Burbank is that we are located in historic Logan Heights. We serve around 385 students at our
Veronica,
63% of which are.
Veronica,
Yes.
could you just pause it for a second? I think we're having trouble
Absolutely.
being able to view it. Give us just a sec, Veronica. Sorry about that.
Of course.
Okay, Veronica, could you start the presentation again?
Do you want me to start it from the very beginning?
Yes, from the very beginning. That would be great. Yeah.
I absolutely will. Hello, my name is Veronica Maxwell, and I am the proud principal of Burbank Elementary School. As you can see from our new logo, our Burbank community remains strong no matter the distance. Some quick facts about Burbank is that we are located in historic Logan Heights. We serve around 385 students at our school, 63% of which are English learners, around 15% who have an IEP, 96% who receive free or reduced lunch, and about 80% of our youth who are currently in transition. We are proud to offer a highly rigorous academic program at our school, including a dual language strand, which currently goes up to the 4th grade. Burbank has celebrated many academic gains the past few years, which we are extremely proud of. One of the reasons for our success is that we have developed a program at our school that supports many aspects of our students' growth, including their social emotional development. You see, research shows that social emotional learning improves achievement by an average of 11 percentile points. It also provides a foundation for safe and positive learning and enhances students' ability to succeed in school, careers, and life. But most importantly, we want our Burbank community to know that they are loved and appreciated. To help us achieve this goal, we have developed a social emotional plan at Burbank. Our plan includes restorative practices, along with the social emotional program from Sanford Harmony that teaches our students how to build healthy relationships and supportive learning communities. Although these are wonderful tools and deserve much attention, today we will focus on our Burbank Way Pledge. This pledge was developed a few years ago as a model in behaviors that we want all of our students to aspire to. But don't take my word for it. Let's hear from our students what the pledge means to them. We are Burbank Bears. We believe in ourselves. We expect excellence. We act responsibly. We respect others. We show self-control. We are Burbank Bears.
Hello, my name is Noah Abdullah. I'm a 4th grader at Burbank Elementary.
Hi, Noah. How do you think our Burbank Pledge helps our students?
The pledge helps us remember what we should be inspired to be. Every Monday, our principal, Miss Maxwell, holds a bear assembly, and she reviews a part of the pledge with us. She reminds us that getting good at something takes lots of practice, that nobody is good at something the first time they try it. We have to work hard and learn from our mistakes. Mistakes are good because that is how we learn. We also learn that it's okay to get mad. Everyone gets mad. But when we do, we learn to stop, take a deep breath, and count to 10 before we act. It is important for us to be kind to each other and treat each other with respect. The Burbank Pledge helps us be better students and better people for our community.
Hi, my name is Mia. I am in 3rd grade.
What does it mean to believe in yourself?
At Burbank, I learned that to believe in yourself means to have confidence in yourself. For example, if you're doing a hard assignment and you find yourself in the dip like the videos on Class Dojo, I keep trying and I don't give up until I solve the problem.
How does this help you be a better student?
When I know that there's a hard assignment or there's something hard I know I should never give up. Hi, my name is Isaiah. I am in first grade.
What does it mean to believe in yourself?
At Burbank, I learned that anything I can put my mind to, I can do it.
How does this help you be a better student?
It's my self-confidence.
It gives you self-confidence?
Yeah. Hello, my name is Abigail and I'm in 5th grade.
What does it mean to expect excellence of yourself?
At Burbank, I've learned that to accept excellence, we have to believe in ourselves. And if we make a mistake, it's okay because that helps us to learn about it.
How does this help you be a better student?
This helps me to be a better student by learning that mistakes are okay to make, and it helps you believe that you can try again. Hi, my name is Aiden and I am in 2nd grade.
And what does it mean to expect excellence of yourself?
At Burbank, I learned that expecting excellence means don't quit just because things get hard.
And how does this help you be a better student?
It helps me learn not to quit. Hi, my name is Isabella and I am in 5th.
What does it mean to act responsibly?
At Burbank, I learned that to act responsibly means take responsibility and to work independently, be prepared for class, and to turn in assignments on time, and have good attendance, and always have camera. Hi, my name is Mercy, and I am in 1st grade.
And what does it mean to act responsibly?
To do your chores your parents ask you to do, and to do your homework and show up on class on time.
How does this help you be a better student?
It helps me be a better student because it helps me to be a good citizen. Hi, I'm in 2nd grade and my name is Mugen.
What does it mean to respect others?
It means to do good things for other people. For example, opening the door for somebody else.
How does this help you be a better student?
It lets other people know that you're a great person.
Hi, my name is Jesse and I am in 3rd grade.
What does it mean to respect others?
It means you should be kind not only to your friends, but to all of your classmates. That's what makes a day at school fun. When everyone gets along and respects each other. When someone feels down, you can just help them and play with them, and they'll feel better.
Hi, my name is Eric, and I'm in 4th grade.
Eric, what does it mean to respect others?
I learned that others means self-control. And if you're in a dip, you gotta help someone. Hi, my name is Amy and I'm in kindergarten.
What does it mean to show self-control?
If my mom tells me stop running, I listen to my mom. Hi, my name is Andrew. I am in 4th grade.
Andrew, what does it mean to show self-control?
At Burbank, I learned that self-control means you can be on task and help others with the work. And it's okay to be mad At Burbank, we learned we had to take a deep breath, then count to 10 before we act.
We are Burbank Bears. We believe in ourselves. We expect excellence. We act responsibly. We respect others. We show self-control. We are Burbank Bears. And there you go.
Love that. Thank you so much, Veronica. That was fantastic. And we, sometimes at the district level, all we get to see are the numbers, and we know the results, that you and the Burbank community have been achieving, and we congratulate you for that. But now we have a sense of, where that comes from, and the students know themselves so well. So thank you and your team, and thank you, Mitzi, for this work. Thanks very much. Okay, we will now move on to item D1, and this is our report out from closed session. And we do have one public speaker before we get to the report out. So citizen 6140, are you available?
I am. Thank you.
Go ahead.
So that is my first question. Is there anything that needs to be reported out from tonight's meeting? There were 2 legal cases on the agenda tonight, one of which involved a student in the special ed program. The board is required by law to report any decisions taken in those cases. Similarly, the agreement for the online learning labs, again, this is not information that was shared by the district, but it's out there. There was a reference to an October 28th agreement for workplace childcare, which allows educators to bring their children on site for phase 1. To my knowledge, this agreement has never been part of a public board agenda. If this agreement was discussed and decided in closed session, the board is required to share that with the public. At this point, parents are losing trust in the district, in the board, and we are urging you to follow through with the bare minimum of communication required by law in order to rebuild that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Ms. Green, if you could report out.
Yes, thank you, President Barrera, and thank you to Citizen 6140 for the reminder. We did, in fact, have 2 legal matters on the agenda this evening, and the board did take action on those. That is a reportable action, which was to settle the 2 cases, OAH case number 202-012-0307, and U.S. District Court case number 321-DV-00019-L-BGS, and the vote on that was 5-0.
Thank you, Ms. Green. Okay, administrative assignments, Superintendent Martin.
Thank you, President Barrera. The administrative assignments for this evening are Cydia Brewer, Roosevelt Middle School Vice Principal, L. Antoine Lincoln, University City High School Vice Principal, Dr. Garnisha Morris, Lewis Middle School Principal, Cynthia Kratushenko, Program Manager, Special Education, and Nicholas Falahi, Assistant General Counsel 2.
Thank you, Superintendent, and congratulations to all of those folks. We're excited. We're excited for those of you who are continuing in our district, and we're excited to welcome the new folks to our district. Okay, and we'll move on to now the item D3, which is our Associated Student Body President's Report. And we'd like our ASB students to introduce themselves, tell us about yourself and what's going on at your school, both academically and socially. And we'll start with Maddie Wozniak from Point Loma High School.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Maddie Wozniak, and I'm the ASB president at Point Loma High School. Currently, we're working on spreading awareness about Black History Month. Our National Honor Society had a guest speaker today. His name is Mark Blackshear, and he came over Zoom to speak about his story growing up as a person of color in San Diego. And he also spoke about resilience and the importance of Black History Month. That was just uploaded on YouTube a few minutes ago, and the link is being posted on our website and all of the class accounts, as well as the ASB accounts. That way the PLHS community can watch. In addition to that video and the guest speaker, we are also creating a list of Black-owned restaurants and businesses in San Diego to send out to the students and families. That way we can show some support to those families. In addition, we just had a food drive through Laurels for Leaders. We collected 275 pounds of food. Our ASB advisor volunteered her driveway as a drop-off center, so we were able to do this socially distanced. Another thing, we just had our second blood drive of the year at Liberty Station through the San Diego Blood Bank, and that had pretty high participation for COVID-19 and being virtual. Also, our construction, our new building is almost done, and we are about to start our second phase. That will include the athletics field and the retaining wall, and that will unfortunately affect next year's home athletics. So we are not sure how we're going to do games next year. We also started an online spirit gear store, and it's going pretty well. And then to celebrate our seniors, we're working on graduation with senior input. We have 2021 hoodies that our media team made, and they're going to sell them in our store. And then we're also making a decision of, are we going to make a video for all of the seniors' college reactions? So if the students want to send in a video of their school that they commit to and their reaction to getting into that college, they will be included in this video that will be sent out to all the parents and students. That's it. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you, Maddie. And then we have Austin Kingston, who's the president of the La Jolla High School ASB and the Council of ASB Presidents. Go ahead, Austin.
Hi there. Thank you all for having me again. Like President Barrera said, I am Austin Kingston. I am ASB president at La Jolla High School, and I am also the president of our district council. So I will be giving 2 reports to you today. First up, I've got my report from my school, La Jolla. So we recently, through the administration, handed out a student survey to all of our students through Google Forms. Teachers were asked to spread this out during second period, and about half of our school responded. This survey regarded questions about mental health, about happiness with distance learning, about connection among students, and about how we felt as a school in terms of spirit and connectedness. And they returned a lot of very positive results, which is very good, because especially as some of my friends and I personally have noted, it can feel really dejecting to log on to Zoom every day and have most of the people with the cameras off and go through class, and it seems kind of slow, and it takes a lot out of us. So it's good to know that La Jolla High School is at least feeling okay. We also officially at the turn of the semester have rolled out most pieces of the equity-based grading. I know that's a big project the district has been working on. So far, it's gone really well. A lot of students like that they have more time to work on a lot of harder things to do, especially given that a lot of classes pile on a lot of work during distance learning, as they feel that a lot of work needs to be done outside of school hours as well. So having that extra time is convenient, and then being able to also relearn the material and show our teachers that we've mastered what we need to know is also great for us students. And I'm really glad that that was rolled out. Our ASB, our student government, has officially transitioned to third quarter. As you know, the quarter system means that we have 3 classes per every 9 weeks. And in our school, this means that during this quarter, ASB does not have a scheduled meeting time. So we've resorted to meeting during our flex time hours for short times once a week. So our student government functions are beginning to slow down this quarter, but hopefully they will pick up back again as we get closer and closer to fourth quarter. And then last but not least, our school's foundation, is hosting a virtual 5K. They're trying to raise money. Our foundation is very active. They sponsor one of the counselors. They also donate a lot of money to the school, and they make our school a much better place. So them having this fundraiser is great for us. They will be hosting this virtual 5K. Announcements will come later in March. And now onto my report on behalf of the Council of Presidents. So we recently had a meeting last month on January 20th. Our next meeting will be next week on the 17th. We spoke about the Great Kindness Challenge, and as my colleague Maddie Wozniak noted, Laurels for Leaders. A lot of schools were working towards handling one or both of those. And a lot of schools had service projects for Laurels for Leaders. And so that was great. We were also talking about how we should gear up for third quarter, as a lot of other schools are on the quarter system. And it can be really hard to work with our students, especially other members in ASB who are feeling disconnected. And as presidents, it is very hard to reach through to some of these people and show the importance of being student leaders. And the last thing we noted was that as student governments, we're finding it very difficult to get things done. And the startup of sports and other extracurriculars has pushed forward a question amongst us, whether or not we will be able to maybe host some extracurriculars with approval from our site principals, like food drives, and then other things that our student governments do to raise money, raise awareness, stuff like that. But overall, those are my reports. It's good to be here, and I look forward to meeting with you guys again.
Thank you, Austin. It was a great report. Thanks to both Austin and Maddie. Okay, we'll now move on to, move on to item D4, which is our superintendent's information report. Go ahead, Superintendent Martin.
Thank you, President Barrera. There's no soup info report this evening.
Okay, well, even though there's no superintendent information report, we've got 3 public comments. And so we'll start with Jenny Murphy. No Jenny. Sherry Schnell.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, Sherry.
Great. I am speaking on this topic because I think it's really important that we have every meeting with a topic for reopening for in-person learning, because this is the most important and critical item for our school district and should be first on the agenda for any superintendent report. Parents are furious with the teachers union because they believe the union is preventing in-person learning, but that is wrong. The blame for the fact that we do not have in-person learning lies directly with this Board of Education and the superintendent. And we need a plan for in-person learning. If classes are too big, then let's separate them into cohorts. Let's do what other schools have done. We can have a certain percentage of the classes in person on different days. If the district is too big for in-person learning, then we need to break it up, because in-person learning is critical for equity and for our students. Let's stop the excuses and figure it out. We have no information in the public about what the plan is to reopen, whether and which schools have sorted out their HVAC ventilation situation. And this is critical that the Board of Education address this at every meeting so that we can move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. And Citizen 6140.
Thank you. Superintendent Martin sent an email to parents about learning labs on Saturday. While these labs are a step in the right direction, it's really shocking that it's taken half the school year to come up with a plan that is staffed by substitutes and is essentially kids on Zoom at a school site. I mean, why wasn't this done in September? You know, based on the substitute rate of pay, a substitute could run all 36 weeks of school for less than $34,000. And I'm not sure how many of these labs are needed, but the CARES Act funding would have been enough to bring back at least half the students. In addition, in the contract language, it says that educators will review data provided by the district as a criteria for the learning lab innovation or invitations. Will the district be sharing what this data is? Parents know their students are doing poorly in this format, and we really need the district to be more transparent with this data. The email from Superintendent Martin said transportation and after-school program details would be provided this week. I actually thought it was going to be right now during this presentation. So I guess I would say we really look forward to hearing more about this program in full from our school board versus from the media. And I will second Sherry Snell to please put reopening as a standing item on the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll now move on to item D5, which is board information reports. So maybe we'll begin with Trustee Patterson.
Thank you, Board President Barrera. I just wanted to start off by recognizing that a new College Board announcement came up for all of our students that are taking AP courses. And while I did give a nice, well-worded rant a few meetings ago on my frustration with the College Board, I can now come back in a little bit more of a positive light. I'm glad to hear that they are moving towards more flexibility with San Diego Unified and districts across the nation in terms of AP testing. There's going to be 3 different times that the tests are going to be offered, and the district is going to be working with school sites to find out when that works best. So that now really accommodates our students that are on quarter schedules that have made this switch, because now they're going to be able to have up to almost 4 weeks more time with their teachers in order to cover the content. So I'm very, very happy about that. And I look forward to Rachel Amato and the other staff in the district working with school sites to ensure that they create a comprehensive plan that works best to ensure student success on our AP tests. Secondly, I want to say, despite the frustration that is going on right now, I do want to say I am happy with our district working to move forward in our agreements. Obviously, we can look across our state and our nation, and we can look at other school districts where the city is suing the school district. We can look at places where we're having really much larger issues. And I think our school district is really taking an approach of working to move forward together. And I'm proud of our school district for doing that. And finally, I want to go to talking about reopening of sports. And I want to give my announcement as a student athlete. I'm finally starting to see us being able to come back and practice together. We're going to be having our first dual cross country meet this weekend, which I'm very excited for. We had CIF and state that finally came back and said that we could do that. So we're all very excited to get back and begin competing together. And for those of us that run cross country and I believe field hockey, if I'm correct, for those sports, it is very exciting to be able to move forward and to be able to get that interaction in that we've been missing for about the past 9 months. So it's a pretty great thing moving forward. Thank you.
That's great to hear, Trustee Patterson. And I think your comments on the College Board might have actually lit a little bit of a fire to get them moving in the right direction. So,
well, I sure hope so.
I think it was very, very productive. Dr. McQuarrie.
Sure. Well, first I want to thank Maddie and Austin for their excellent student representative and council of student presidents report. So during my morning walk, as I was passing Kate Sessions Elementary School in Pacific Beach, I was listening to a Chuck Rosenberg podcast called The Oath, which includes his interviews with people who take the oath of office and dedicate themselves to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States. This morning, I was listening to Chuck Rosenberg interview Dr. Carla Hayden, who was appointed by President Obama to be the first African-American female and Librarian of Congress. When appointed in 2016, Dr. Hayden became the 14th Librarian of Congress and the first African-American female to head the Library of Congress. She was born in Tallahassee, Florida, and grew up in Queens, New York, and Chicago. In the interview, Dr. Hayden shared her early love of books and described the first time she read a book that had a picture of a little girl about her age with pigtails and who looked just like her. She described the impact that this experience had on her sense of self, agency, and empowerment. After graduating with a degree in history and political science and considering a career in law, Dr. Hayden accepted a temporary position in a local library that changed the trajectory of her life, leading to a lifelong love and career of public service in supporting community and school libraries, and ultimately, the Library of Congress. I share this interview not only because it is a beautiful story of a very talented person, but because it reminds us of the importance that libraries have on our personal and professional lives and the benefits libraries bring to our community and schools. Plus, it is an opportunity to acknowledge Black History Month and celebrate important contributions that African Americans have made and continue to make in our lives, schools, communities, and in our nation's capital. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. McQuarrie. Trustee Beiser.
I'll defer to agenda items for comment.
Thank you. And Trustee Bazzo.
I just wanted to share a little update since I'm the new kid here on the school board of some of the things I've been trying to do in District 8. I mean, I'm just really been impressed in meeting with different principal cluster meetings and with town councils. And I have some meetings that I'm going to be setting up with various PTAs. Just all the things that are going, you know, I mean, I know there's a lot of negative, but there's also a lot of positive things going on at these schools. And it's just amazing to hear all the things that, you know, the schools are coming up with. I've met with within District A, we have four clusters. I've met for 3 of the principal the clusters with just the principals at Claremont, Mira Mesa, and University City. And again, just been so impressed with them. They're just doing such great work under pressure. And I'm looking forward to meeting with Madison as well. And as I mentioned, I've also been meeting with the various town councils. And just to get a sense of all the accomplishments that are being made and to familiarize them with me, because it's such an unusual time to come on the school board and not be able to just walk into schools and meet with people, but trying to make the best of that. And I also wanted to share that I got a virtual tour of the Mira Mesa High School from the principal there. And I know this is happening across the district. There's just so much amazing construction going on, I think, at a lot of different sites. And he gave me this great tour, and I didn't even recognize the campus. If you don't know, Mira Mesa was built in 1976, and there hasn't been a lot of changes. So it's been over 50 years that, you know, much has been done there, which again is true of many buildings in our district. But it was just so nice and refreshing to see. I guess it's a silver lining, I think, of COVID, that the construction is moving along. And so there are some bright spots. And some of the bungalows there that they took down were from the 1940s. So time to get rid of those. And in their place, they have brand new math buildings. They have outdoor classroom settings. So again, I know this is going on across the district. Just wanted to point out that I think it's so important, because I think it's going to give our kids that sense of pride and just having that attractive campus to come back to. And I'm excited to see those changes when we do get our kids back on campus. And I'm just going to continue to try to connect as much as I can with any types of groups within, you know, our district or outside too, or within District A, but anywhere across the district, just to continue learning and working towards, you know, getting people that they recognize who I am, and trying to help in the best way I can, and support those schools and the staff that are doing such great work. So
thank you, Trustee Balzo. Vice President Whitehurst Payne.
Thank you, President Barrera. This is African American or Black History Month. So I want to commend Maddie, and also commend Dr. Mike for at least mentioning it as a part of their reports, to let me know and the community know that they're thinking about it some. And I'd like to say I had the opportunity on last week to honor a 100-year-old Lelia Sampson in Mount Hope. She was a former teacher and race human relations facilitator. And I want to thank Jeff Zevely for recognizing and honoring her. So he did a piece on her. And it was just a wonderful opportunity to see someone who had dedicated her life to the children here in San Diego, and to say on behalf of the district that we do appreciate all the work that she's done. I thank Melissa for getting a certificate together, and the community folks who honored her with that drive-by, as you call it, you know, the drive-by parties now for 100-year-olds. And I'd like to say that we're making some progress with recognizing Reverend George Walker Smith, who was the first African-American politician here in San Diego County. And a lot of other politicians will note that he was the foundation for all of us, but we're moving forward to do something, and hopefully we'll be bringing it back the next board meeting. And I just want to say that I'm just happy that we are moving forward, even with the project that Charles 3X Alexander presented with Reading Daily. You can, hopefully classrooms are partaking of that. I know I did Madam C.J. Walker last week, and others have come online to do a recognition of video for folks to see and for schools to use every day of the month. So there are 28 different videos out there, hopefully, and by the end of the month that they can then tap into. So thank you for this opportunity as we move forward.
Great. Thank you, Sharon. Okay, we will move on to item E1, and this is our 2021 English Learner Master Plan. And Superintendent Martin, could you introduce this item?
Yes, thank you, President Brewer. The purpose of this document or the master plan this evening is, on one level, it's to comply with the legal obligations for students with limited English proficiency, and that's to make sure that they meaningfully participate in the educational programs and services. But beyond that, it's the implementation of this, and you're going to hear from one of our leaders and two of our leaders, actually. The Office of Language Acquisition has preparing this item has compiled two ways in which to share the information. One is a narrative and the other is a visual landing page. The first document is San Diego Unified School District EL Master Plan, and in that it describes all of our detailed policies and our practices for our multilingual students. And that's the compliance notebook, and that provides sites with the resources and the tools that they need to implement English learner best practices. I'd like to introduce Ms. Laskowski this evening from our Office of Language Acquisition, and I know we're lucky to also have Dr. Cynthia Larkin, principal from Morse High School, that's going to add some more detail around the work that our ELACs are doing.
Thank you, Superintendent Martin, and thank you, Board of Trustees, for having us this evening. Marty, am I able to share my screen? We have a very brief presentation.
Yes, you're ready
Yes.
to start.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Okay, so as Superintendent Martin said, this is our master plan to provide clarity on the policies related to the implementation, monitoring, and evaluation of our English learners, our English learner programs and services. It provides procedural guidelines for identification, assessment, placement of students, reclassification, and parent involvement via ELAC and DLAC. It is an alignment of our policies and procedures with state and federal mandates. And the CDE does require that we have both on-site and online procedure documentations for our public and our leaders. So this is a visual of our narrative plan on the left, and that is 6 chapters. There's an introduction. Chapter 1 talks about our multilingual identification process. Chapter 2 is the programs that are available for ELD and program options. Chapter 3 describes monitoring those programs. Chapter 4 highlights professional development, and that is at the district level, and that happens at the site level as well. And then Chapter 5 is information on testing, reclassification, and monitoring. And Chapter 6 highlights the ELAC and DLAC or family engagement portion. We have Dr. Cynthia Larkin here today to describe a little bit of this, what we call our EL compliance notebook. And in this notebook, as Superintendent Martin said, this serves as the application of those policies and procedures. And this notebook is digital, so it can be updated on the spot. It provides what we call our informational or landing pages. There's resources available. That's the narrative. And then overviews of our policies. And then you can see they have information. This is the landing page. And I'm going to have Dr. Cynthia Larkin go ahead and let me get back to our share on this slide on how she was able to utilize this particular landing page for her ELAC committee.
So thank you, Teresa. Good evening, everyone. So I am Cynthia Larkin, principal at Morris High School. And I have a functioning ELAC at Morris. Our parents decided to actually keep our ELAC strong at Morris and not delegate it to the SSE. So every single year, I have to plan 4 meetings pertaining to the ELAC legal task. And as a principal, it's really nice to be able to have all of the digital resources in one place on this landing page to be able to effectively plan our meetings. This summer, when I was planning for our ELAC meetings for the school year, I did reach out to Teresa and asked her for some resources, and she provided me with the notebook with the landing page in it. And it's really made planning our meetings an ease. I really love the fact that the document has all of the PowerPoints with very detailed information pertaining to the different legal tasks. And it also has them in both English and in Spanish. It's also nice that the landing pages have agendas, both in English and in Spanish. And it's just really been very easy to plan because as a principal, sometimes we have folders here and there, documents everywhere, but to be able to go to one central resource and be able to pull information to ensure that we are serving our English learners well has been very, very helpful.
Thank you, Dr. Larkin. So the narrative has everything, and we realized that that would probably not be very helpful for our leaders. And so as Cynthia said, we felt that an interactive page would be the best. So we just want to thank you for your time and let you know that we believe that our EL master plan is in alignment with the work that we're doing in our anti-racist and anti-bias system, and that we believe that this alignment across our system will support our English learners experience a coherent, articulated, and aligned set of practices and pathways across grade levels, our educational segments, and continue through reclassification, graduation, and higher education.
Great, thank you so much, Teresa. And we do have 2 public speakers on this item. So Francisca Salzado.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, Francisca.
Thank you. Yes, this is Francisca Salcedo. And I wanted to comment that the English Learner Master Plan does not specify what direct services English learners will be receiving. In 2019, the state found many areas that needed to be addressed so that the district would be in compliance regarding services to English learners. Look at Chapter 2, Options. I did not see direct services specified. These students will need one-to-one and small group instruction so they can reach timely reclassification. The district's recent announcement that it would be opening learning labs for at-risk students, including English learners, is worrisome. Will the substitutes and paraprofessionals be provided with professional development? When I was a 12-year-old newcomer to the school district as an English learner, I was fortunate to receive the support of amazing teachers and classmates. Even the best online learning program cannot even come close to providing these essential supports to English learners. English learners and every other student in San Diego Unified School District needs in-person full-time education as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. And Citizen 6140.
Hi, thank you. And thank you for sharing this master plan. On page 49, it discusses program monitoring and interventions. And I was just wondering if you could share if DLAC had input in these interventions. I'd also would like to see better metrics around these interventions per school site so we can understand where there are gaps in the delivery of them. It would be nice if there were specifics also around the budget for English language learners and how much it needs to be used for actual targeted interventions, Too often the budget is just not used for the direct services, as the prior speaker said, and it's just not making its way down to the student level. And then later in the document, you address the reclassification criteria. And what particularly stood out was the reading levels, because they are very low. For example, for the Fountas and Pinnell, the I is actually not meeting expectations for first grade. And literacy is a giant part of language acquisitions. So I would like to know what happens if a child's reclassified but is actually under the expectations for reading, and how will that be treated? Are they still going to be eligible for small group interventions, etc.? Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, first, can we get a motion and a second on the?
So moved.
Moved by Trustee Beiser and seconded by Dr. McQuarrie. Okay, board member questions or comments? Yes, Trustee Patterson.
Thank you, Board President Barrera. I think that was a good question that was brought up. Can I hear a little bit about what some of the DLAC's feedback was maybe, and then how we improved?
Thank you, Zach. Yes, of course. So we do work with our DLAC officers as well as the DLAC group in general. So when we think about, are you, I guess the question more referring to the interventions? Is that what you were?
Yeah, that's what I was referring to.
Yes. So the interventions are ideas that we bring forward to our DLAC and we share with them. I'll give an example. We actually take them through some of those events. So we went through a text reconstruction with them last DLAC meeting so that our parents will understand the types of strategies and supports that we would expect our students or their children to experience, and to see the benefits, the language building that these strategies will have, so that when our parents can understand when we say interventions, what that might feel like, look like, and their student experience. So that's a very short way in which we give them the experience so that they can give us feedback and then understand the ways in which we're building the academic language for their students at their grade level with the content we're expecting them to, with the content we're expecting our children to use. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Vice President Whitehurst Payne.
This one is also for Teresa. Teresa, what kind of impact are you all seeing that COVID has had on the students in this program?
Dr. Whitehurst Payne, to be perfectly frank, I think we've heard the stories. It has been very difficult for our English learners in particular. I think our students who are newer to the country, we have had to provide supports to parents and students to help with technology. The idea of building that oral language has been really difficult. Our students engage more via the chat than they do in oral language. And so I think that's been one of the barriers that we are looking into. I think the learning labs that we are discussing and other opportunities for our students to begin to exercise and practice that dialogue, the academic talk, is something we really need to focus on as a system. And I will say my hats go off to our teachers and our principals who are working so diligently to engage our students and our families with full participation with online learning.
Thank you for being honest and sharing.
Thank you. Other board member comments or questions? Teresa, oh, I'm sorry, Dr. McQuarrie, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I definitely want to thank Teresa and Dr. Markin for their report. So our community governance committees are critical to the district's mission to meet the needs of all of our students and to develop and maintain quality schools in every neighborhood. The work that you're doing here and with the collaboration of our English language learners and their families is absolutely critical. And I just want to thank you for your effort. And I want us to continue to make progress to communicate clearly, work transparently, address the needs of all of these students so that all students can succeed, be ready for college, career, and civic and global engagement.
Thank you, Dr. McQuarrie. Teresa, it's not directly related to the master plan, but while you're here, could you give us an update on how the LPAC testing is going, and also conversations that we may be having with the California Department of Education about if students struggle because of the online nature of the LPAC testing, how can we work on alternative methods of reclassifying students who actually are proficient, but might struggle with the online testing?
Thank you, Trustee Barrera. That it makes, how can I say, it's a very complex situation. So I will say, for now, our LPAC window just opened February 1st. We have trained people. The training is very different now. So there's a Moodle training that has been created for the state. So any assessor engages in that online training individually. So in the past, we used to have rooms where we trained our assessors. The calibration for that, for the summative LPAC, takes some time and practice. So we've hit a little bit of snag with that. However, we do have some assessing going on online. So that has begun. As we move forward in our appointment-based, targeting some of our students who might benefit from on-site or in-person testing, even though it is all online, that is an opportunity we're looking into. We're looking into different ways in which we can get more assessors, because much of the K-2 is one-on-one. So we want to provide our sites with support. So we met with principals and collected some input from them regarding some of the barriers that they foresee. And we are working with our state partners. We're looking to CABE for guidance as well. So there is some outreach going to the state and federal government. There was supposed to be an SBE, or State Board of Education meeting February 10th, and I believe that it might have been canceled is what I heard, or postponed. So we're awaiting state and federal guidance. When you talk about a possible waiver for reclassification criteria, again, out of my control, but very much supporting our partners in thinking about how might we rethink reclassification for our students who are ready.
Yeah.
So those we're following and working alongside with Enrique Rochoa. I'm not sure of his last name, but we are working with him as well.
Okay, great. That's great to hear. Thank you, Teresa.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, if there are no further board comments or questions, we'll go ahead and vote. Trustee Patterson.
Aye.
Vice President Whitehurst Payne.
Aye.
Thank you. Trustee Bazzo. I think that was an aye. Trustee Beiser.
Aye.
And Trustee McQuarrie.
Aye.
And Barrera, aye. Great. Thank you, Teresa. Thanks so much. And thank you. Cynthia. Yep. Great. Okay, we will now move on to item E2. And this is our Freedom Summer 2020 update. And this is on restorative discipline policy. Superintendent Martin.
Thank you, President Barrera. This summer, I'll just remind everybody when we do this item, a regular update. When we had our board workshop this summer, you all as a Board of Education made a commitment, and that commitment was to continue to keep the issue of racial justice and equity in the forefront of our work all throughout the year. So that was July 21st, 2020, when we had that Freedom Summer workshop. And at that point, the board, you all listened to our students and they shared their lived experiences. And then you approved the staff recommendations that were designed to strengthen all of our key strategies that allow us to achieve racial justice and equity across the entire district. So on a regular basis, as a result of that, we provide an update on the steps that we're taking in this school year so that we're eliminating the barriers that prevent our students of color from receiving equitable access, experiences, and outcomes. So specifically, the board is going to be provided always with these updates on the implementation and the recommendations. And to remind everybody that all of the areas we're working on throughout the year are staff diversity, implementation of the ethnic studies for all students, the interruption of discriminatory grading policies and practices, the dismantling of discriminatory discipline policies and practices, and our efforts to build anti-racist and restorative school communities. Then on October 27th, you approved the revisions to the uniform discipline policy, and that was for the exact purpose of disrupting discriminatory discipline practices in a way that we would incorporate restorative practices, preventative strategies, and supportive interventions. What you're going to hear tonight in the update is provided on the implementation of the policy since the date that you approved it back in October. We want to give you an update on what that implementation looks like. And with that, I'll turn it over to Ms. Thede and Ms. DeWitt.
Thank you, Superintendent Martin, and good evening to all of the members of the board. Ms. DeWitt and I are here tonight to present the district's update on our restorative discipline policy. With us tonight, we also have one of our amazing San Diego Unified School District students. During our October 13th presentation, we shared with you that we will use the same framework for each presentation, and it's done intentionally to ensure that we keep a laser focus on our goals. In July, we described achievement of our outcomes through a purposeful design, including our commitment to eliminating inequities and disproportionality by focusing on what we value and the actions that what we make is a real difference for students, changing policies that perpetuate inequities, and supporting our schools, teachers, and educators every step of the way. This includes engaging in real dialogue on how our experiences and beliefs shape our words and our actions. As you can see from our timeline, our district equity team is going to continue to provide monthly updates to the board that focus on each area of our Summer Freedom Declaration, with a culminating report scheduled for June 22nd of this year. I'll turn it over to Mrs. Nicole DeWitt and our student presenter to discuss our implementation since the board approved the changes to our restorative discipline policy.
Thank you so much, Akeisha. So tonight, we will give the board an update on professional development to support the implementation of our restorative discipline policy, as well as our progress on the development of the role of the adult champion. So since the passing of our restorative discipline policy, our district has been committed to providing ongoing professional development that takes an integrated approach to ensure that our sessions touch upon all areas of awareness as it relates to building anti-racist and restorative communities. Our central office counselors will help support school sites remotely in the role of adult champions as we work with our stakeholder groups to develop how site-level adult champions will be implemented for the 21-22 school year. Our district teams continue to work together to provide integrated and comprehensive trainings that include an anti-racist, anti-biased awareness, restorative justice practices, culturally relevant curriculum with increased access to ethnic studies, and inclusive classrooms that utilize quality learning interactions as well as quality teaching practices. In November, over 400 district and site administrators attended this integrated training during our Principal Institute. Their overwhelmingly supportive response to this training led to cluster and school site requests to bring the integrated training to their areas. The Point Loma cluster, a no place for hate community, is just one area where this training has already taken place with approximately 185 attendees. In order to implement the core beliefs of the restorative discipline policy, our Restorative Justice Practices Department in partnership with the National Center for Conflict Resolution, NCRC, have developed a multi-tiered approach for training that starts with laying the foundation for a restorative justice mindset. This series initially started with Practice Courage and has since expanded to a variety of offerings to best meet the needs of our staff members. At this time, we have reported over 4,800 session attendees across all of our Tier 1 offerings. In addition to Tier 1 trainings, we will continue our professional development with a Tier 2 series focused on restorative system building and meaningful engagement, and a Tier 3 series focused on addressing harm and transforming conflict. These sessions will be offered throughout the remainder of this current school year and are open to all employees. Cluster and school sites are also collaborating with the RJP department to develop a series of customized trainings for their students, staff, and community. We have already launched a successful parent webinar series at Franklin Elementary and are working alongside our principals at Fay and within the Sarah cluster to develop RJP trainings for their communities. RJP and NCRC staff also continue to engage with youth throughout the district to develop the capacity of our students to lead restorative justice work through the Mentoring RJP Youth Leaders Program. As mentioned earlier, for the remainder of the 2021 school year, central office counselors will support school sites in the role of an adult champion. Central office champions were assigned by cluster based on existing partnerships and will provide the following supports for students exhibiting suspended or expellable behaviors: restorative or reentry circles, virtual check-ins and meeting participation, arranging for support services for students and families, explaining student and family rights with the suspension and expulsion process, and teaching students and families how to advocate and promote positive interactions. Earlier this month, we distributed guidelines for the use of central office champions to our site administrators for use starting on February 1st. We knew we needed adult champions now, but we also wanted to give our stakeholders input in creating the role of site champions. In December and January, input sessions that included site administrators, educators, central office staff, parents, and students came together to discuss the role of a site champion and what support they could provide. At this time, I would like one of our input session participants, Morris High School student Arlene, to speak about the importance of student voice and choice for site champions. Arlene?
Thank you, Ms. Dewitt, for the introduction. As a current senior, I believe that one of the hardest lessons I've learned is to rely on others. And I'm thankful for having a stable support system of family and friends, but we still often underestimate the role of teachers, counselors, and other faculty that act as our rock, especially as we're undergoing these challenges. Since we have very little opportunity to voice out our opinions to staff and higher ups, adult champions are the solution. They will act as our advocate and will be there when others are unaware and refuse to listen to our needs. As somebody known for establishing good relations with my teachers, I've experienced firsthand how they can stand up for us by acting as our confidants and talking to their colleagues on the students' behalf to ensure that we get the support and assistance we need to succeed. Frankly, I would have needed an adult champion in my earlier years of high school. Unfortunately, in my sophomore year, I was a victim of cyberbullying, and it was one of the most mentally straining times of my life. And although the help I received was out of good intention, like being pulled out of classes on a daily basis to seek a counselor or have discussions with the vice principals, it didn't help that I still missed material I could have covered if the opportunity to say that I felt okay to be anywhere but class at that time. An adult champion would have been there to empathize with my needs, know where I was coming from, and be my cheerleader when I need it most. And all in all, I believe that while faculty and staff may be working or believe they may be working in the best interest of their students, they should be reminded that not one student is alike and may require different needs. Whether or not they want an adult champion or believe they would be better off without one, what matters is that they are there to use as a resource when navigating that intimidating disciplinary process. Students deserve to be heard and have equal and equitable access to adults that care about not just their academic, but personal and developmental wellness. And thank you, Board of Trustees, Superintendents, faculty, and students for your time.
Thank you so much for that, Arlene. Very much appreciated. On the next two slides, you will see the feedback and guidance provided by the stakeholder groups for your reference. One of the major themes that emerged was the need to include all staff as potential champions and to ensure students have a choice in who their champion is. In addition, there was much conversation around providing advocacy, guidance, and restorative interactions as a key factor for supporting students and their families prior to and during the suspension and expulsion process. It was also agreed upon that a site champion would be offered to a student when they are exhibiting potentially suspendable behaviors. In addition, suggestions for the recruitment of site champions included the use of student surveys and peer recommendations. For implementation, it was reiterated that the role of the site champion should be customized to meet the needs of students, and that although there needs to be established district-wide expectations, sites should collaborate with their students, parents, and community on the best way to move forward with the site champion role. In the coming months, we will focus our efforts in relation to the restorative discipline policy on the following. Our RJP department will collaborate with cluster leaders to complete a needs assessment to determine cluster trainings for Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3 RJP sessions. Our goal is to train 4 clusters per semester starting this spring. In addition, we will work with our IT department to update behavior incident reporting procedures to align with the restorative response matrix in the new policy, and will develop site champion expectations and guidelines for implementation during the 21-22 school year. Thank you so much for your time this evening and your support of our restorative discipline policy.
Great. Thank you so much, Nicole and Acacia and Arlene. That was really, really fantastic. So we do have one speaker on this item, and that is Citizen 6140.
Hi, thank you. I signed up for this item, E2, and then also E3 and E4, and you can just count this for all of them.
Okay.
So it's frustrating as a parent that there isn't a standing item on the agenda about reopening schools, because there was another workshop that was held this summer, and it was the school reopening workshop. So why is it that the Freedom Workshop has an entire timeline for every board meeting between September and year end, and there is nothing, zero about school reopening? I mean, you just heard Superintendent Martin say that it was put as a standing agenda item to keep it at the forefront of the board. And then Acacia Thede said that they use the same format to be laser focused on the goals. So where is this laser focus on reopening? I mean, the prior speaker is correct. The fact that schools are not reopened, that responsibility is your responsibility. The board needs to ask Superintendent Martin to bring back on a scheduled basis a report about the status of school reopenings. And like the Freedom Workshop presentation, it should be consistent and laser focused on the steps necessary to get students back to on-site learning. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, board questions or comments? Yes, Vice President Whitehurst Payne.
I must say I am excited about this, and I was a court-appointed special advocate at one time, a CASA, and this reminds me of that, because you have to spend the necessary time as adults to work with children, students individually, in order to meet their needs when you have certain students who need it. So I'm delighted that they've moved forward with implementing that program. And we're not in session this particular time at this time, but I'm looking forward to seeing a change in this district, so that when we open, we will not have this disproportionate number of African American and Latino students being suspended or expelled or whatever, but that we're given that support that students need in time to diminish that whole factor of discrimination that's been shown over the years, whether it's covert or otherwise overt. So I'm glad to see this adult champion, but you heard the student from Morris actually say advocate. So in her mind's eye, she sees it as an advocate, an advocacy role. And I think if we can have this ready to go when we get back into school, that it should make a world of difference for our students. And I look forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Whitehurst-Payne. Any other, yeah, Trustee Patterson.
Thank you, Board President Barrera. I didn't know that, Dr. Whitehurst-Payne, that you were a counselor. That's a really cool perspective to be able to bring on to here, being a counselor and getting to see that.
No, no, no,
You
no,
weren't
no,
a
no, no,
counselor? Oh, sorry, I
no.
thought you said.
A CASA, which is a court-appointed special advocate. It's an advocate that the judge actually assigns folks who have been specially trained to work with individual students who are in the court system, who have been placed there. Yeah, it's detailed, but it's a long training session you go through to advocate on behalf of individual students or a family to meet their needs, not as the lawyer for the child, not as a lawyer for the court, lawyer for no one, but for that child, and to look at all aspects of that child's life to try to help them to get through the system. So
that's even better than a counselor in terms of a comparison here. That, yeah, such a good perspective as an advocate. Thank you, Arlene, so much for sharing. Arlene's our communications director on the Student Advisory Board, and to the staff that brought us in and worked to include more students. Thank you so much for doing this. We see how Arlene really brings in a special perspective and really helps us get a better understanding as a board, and really grounds us into what our goals are, which is being with students. And what better way to do that than being partners with students moving forward. And I spoke to a counselor at a student equity ambassador meeting last Thursday, and I asked her, what are some of the issues you see with counselors specifically? And she mentioned our ratios and how it's 1 to 484 in the middle school level. And she asked me, she said, you know, every counselor requires an individualized approach. Every student needs something different. And she said, with all due respect, how do you want me to provide that? And how do you expect every counselor to do that when they have 484 other students to deal with? And, you know, I didn't really have an answer because I didn't think there was a good one. And what is so exciting to me about this new role is the fact that we are bridging a gap and we are finding a way to provide support for our most vulnerable students and for our students of color to ensure that people can have a partner through this process. And when a counselor can't provide that individualized support, we are training staff to ensure that we have somebody being a partner there. And while lowering that ratio from counselor to student would require a totally different funding system, we are making solutions with what we have in San Diego Unified. And that is something to be really proud of. And something that, again, Arlene, thank you so much for bringing that up, mentioning how you're having a partner in making sure that you receive what you're entitled to and that you have someone that can work through this with you. Because having an adult partner and having somebody to advocate for you is something that's oftentimes left out in the education system, and we're working really hard to make a difference. So I thank staff for all that they're doing here. And my one question would be for staff. I asked this in our meeting, but I think it would be good for the public to just get a better understanding of it. So for the schools that we chose right now, what were the main things we used to choose our beginning schools?
That's a great question, Zach. So we're still in the process of identifying the different clusters that will be part of the different phases. But what we're trying to do is not just look at suspension and expulsion rates, but also the disproportionalities that are happening. So just because a school might have a lower suspension and expulsion rate doesn't mean that the disproportionalities aren't present. And sometimes those schools that have lower suspension and expulsion rates have bigger disproportionalities when it comes to the students that are being suspended and expelled. So we're really trying to make sure that for each training area for the spring, the fall, and the following spring, that we have a good mix and cross section across our district. So that way we're implementing it in many different areas, geographic areas of our district, and not just solely in one area.
And what's the transition from central? You mentioned how you have the two levels, you have the office champions, the central office champions, and you have the site champions. Will you just quickly touch on kind of the distinction between them and what the ultimate goal is there?
Yes, absolutely. So we are in a very different environment right now. And so it does allow us to use central office resource staff to help support in this role as we worked with our stakeholder groups to develop that site level champion. So we really wanted to make sure that we engaged with our parents, our students, our educators, our administrators to really flesh out what does it mean to be a site level champion and what would the site level champion provide. So right now, the central office champions are supporting in the role of a champion for the remainder of this school year, with the plan to implement the site level champions for the 21-22 school year. So for the next few weeks, we will develop guidance to share out with our staff and how to recruit. And then we will provide some training and professional development for site level champions so that we can utilize them for the 21-22 school year.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Trustee Patterson. Yeah, Trustee Bazo.
Yeah, thank you. It sounds like you guys are doing great work. Congratulations on putting together a great program. I just had some questions. So with regard to like being able to measure the accomplishments, I know it states in the slideshow that you're going to be establishing district-wide expectations and parameters, but then also talks about customizing to meet the needs of students. And I was wondering if you could kind of provide an example of what you mean by that. So are there going to be some metrics that are just within that specific site that they're measuring, and then some are district-wide? And then also how to make it accountable so that each school is carrying, the process is being carried out sufficiently and not more at one school site and less at another. Like, is there anything being put into place to make sure that the program is going to be, accountable across the district? And also when, how often would we get reports back at the board level about what's going on?
So that's kind of a two-part question. So I'll start with the first one. So when our RJP department initially does outreach to a school site or a cluster, they do a needs assessment initially in that first meeting. So they meet with the cluster or the site administrator to assess what are the needs around restorative justice practice, because our schools are at different places, because we've had restorative justice as part of our district for many years. And so we are at different levels. So they do that needs assessment right off the bat to see where it needs to go next for that particular school site or cluster. But there are some foundational elements of restorative justice practice as it relates to our discipline policy and implementation of the discipline policy that we are going to be measuring to make sure that all of our sites are in alignment with those foundational pieces. So we'll do like a pre-assessment and a post-assessment, and there will be some follow-up and support with school sites during the training as well as after the training to make sure that we are implementing with fidelity.
And then can I add to that, Trustee Bazo? One of the components that we've discussed as part of our Freedom Summer work is the intention to have site equity teams. And so on the data piece and the monitoring piece, it's a two-level process for monitoring. So each site will develop their own process for monitoring in this area, as well as the other ones identified as part of our work. And so that is that is intended for the purpose of ensuring that each site is being responsive to the needs of the students, staff, adults, and community that are part of the work. And then to say, all right, here's where we're doing well, here's where we need to make some growth, and here's where we need to maybe have some professional development or additional training. So we have a multifaceted system for us to look at our work, look at how we're making changes, and doing that in the way, meeting people in the place where they need information and customizing the support for the sites.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Bazo. So I wonder, I'm sorry, Dr. McQuarrie, go ahead.
Again, thank you for your excellent report. Our school governance committee, let's see, hold on. So I want to, thank you for the report regarding the progress that we're making in developing restorative discipline with the lens of racial justice and equity. And I want to remind our communities that the action taken to establish this program was based on a board decision to create a committee and for the committee to bring back a recommendation to the board. So the committee was created, the committee did their work, The committee made a recommendation to the board. Action was taken by the board that was grounded on the advisory principle of responding to recommendations made by board-created committees. Now we're following through on that board action, and we are continuing to make progress. And I bring this up because of during the last board meeting, we had a number of people that made comments about the board having committees that they don't listen to. And I gave a number of examples at that time of the number of committees that have been created and the number of committees which we have responded to. And we are continuing to do that. This board does take the community recommendations to heart. We want to make sure that our committees know that they are advisory and they do come back with their recommendations, and we need to balance those recommendations within the broader perspective of harm and benefit in order to make our decision. But this is a committee created by the board that brought back recommendation. Recommendation was approved, and now the recommendation is being implemented. And I want to thank the team and the district and the superintendent for making that happen.
Thank you, Dr. McClory. I just wanted to, so first of all, thank you so much for the presentation. And one item that really stuck out that I appreciate is that we would identify champions for students when we see a student who may be in a situation that could result in, some form of discipline, but trying to be proactive, not just assigning a champion after the issue that would give rise to discipline has occurred. And I wonder if Arlene and Zach, if you wanted to jump in as well. So at the point that a student is assigned a champion, it's generally going to be a stressful situation. What do you think is the best way to get the word out to students before they're in the middle of a stressful situation that, that you might have access to a champion? And so you just kind of know, that once you're in it, a champion is somebody that could be there and be supportive. How do you get that information out to students before they're in the middle of a stressful situation? Yes, Arlene, please. Yeah.
I think the best way to implement these policies would honestly being very vocal and transparent about it before like an infraction is made. Like say school assemblies were held, giving students or just like even reminding them of their rights as students, what they are entitled to, that they have the option and resource of using these adult champions to their disclosure. And obviously that would be an agreement made with the adult champion and the student themselves, because, like I said, there's no two students that are the same in what they need. And I think that's just the best way to go about it, because if we continue to keep quiet, or I guess like just not be vocal about what rights these students have, I guess they just wouldn't be aware of it in the first place. And it's our job to share and spread the news beforehand, before we get into those stressful situations, of course.
No, I appreciate that. Yeah, it's great. And Zach, did you have any thoughts about that? Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So I was thinking similar to what we had going on with the committee that we had that was dealing with potential sexual harassment issues, and the board, or they decided to go with the route of a poster contest and putting out posters on school campuses. I actually think that was effective. And I do think it's also effective where they have suicide hotline numbers, where they have them on posters on campuses. I found that to be an effective way that students just know they have that resource like that, because they're always walking by it. I think, a big one that I know that a lot of the middle schools use in these situations, they put it in the school binders. I can't say I would find that necessarily effective, but I think either having that posted somewhere in an easy, visible place, or having it just directly communicated from the teacher to the student directly. And that verbal communication, which is often easily forgotten, to be honest. We have a lot of rights as students that they're not aware about, just because they're written in this dense packet that isn't the most interesting to read. So if we're verbally communicating, if we're visually communicating, I think we'll be in a good situation. And the final aspect I would add, it just goes back to our ability to have a social media presence as well. We have a very, very large population of students that have social media. And I know our district is continually working on this, but being able to describe that we have support and that there are outlets there. Arlene actually says, in addition to being our communications director, she serves on one of the district's wellness committees, and they have a very good social media presence working on mental health and wellness. And I do actually find that effective in communicating with students the different resources. And I think if we invested a little bit more in talking about the specific focuses that we have as a board and what we want students to know, I think we could be really effective.
No, that's very helpful. And I wonder if we could ask, the Student Trustee Advisory Committee and the Student Equity Ambassadors to maybe, do some focused work around this and make some recommendations to Nicole and Acacia and the folks that are putting this together. I think those are really excellent ideas, and I bet there's a lot more creativity where that came from. Thank you. And I think Vice President White was saying, yeah.
I just want to say, I think that it's all of the above and then some. When I was first appointed as a CASA, the judge was actively seeking someone to work with this child. And to be, I'll just, confession is good for the soul. I was looking for a little girl to play with, to drink tea with, go to the movies or whatever, and help that child. And this was an African-American young man who apparently the judge felt he really needed some support. And so he asked me if I would take the case. And then, I fell in love with him and he with me. But the bottom line is that the adults around see who's spiraling out of control too. And they need to take an active role in actively trying to find someone, or the system needs to find a way to support the very students that people would say, well, I know I'm a female and this child really needs a male, but at the time I was the only African-American in the program. And I thought, the judge is asking me, maybe he sees that there's something I can do. And indeed, we did graduate. We graduated from high school. We got through the program. And so I don't want us to only look at it as something the students would come forward or they would voluntarily do it. But if staff members see a child needs some support, they need to offer it. Parents or whoever it is should make that offer. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Yeah, Trustee Patterson.
On that note, it did make me think, my only concern is making people feel comfortable to have a site champion and to be encouraged. That's something that I would definitely want to go back to the Student Advisory Board about, or just some more brainstorming. But just that breaking down the barrier and that comfort level, I just feel like there's a stigma oftentimes around saying you need help and being willing to have someone be your advocate and be a support for you. And I'd be concerned that this could become kind of taboo in order to seek someone out. So I know there was some guidance released to principals. I haven't reviewed it yet, but I definitely want to, we want to be sure that this can be something that's put into use and that students do feel comfortable. And I definitely don't have all the answers for that, but I don't know if Arlene, you have any thoughts on this as well, but I do think that that could be an issue, to kind of that we're break apart where we're not on the same place, students versus what we're providing.
Yeah, no, I totally see your concerns on that. Yeah, I know how it feels to be ostracized when you are seeking to go to the counselor, to go talk to a teacher, but I think it honestly just goes back to having, the select few teachers and faculty that you can trust, because it all goes back to them, honestly. I'm sure we all have that one teacher we can remember who's just really personable. They're not solely based on academics. They care about the well-being of their students. They ask how their day is. They check in, say hey, how is it going? And I think it's those people who know that aside from being students, we have other roles in our lives. Besides being a student, we're also older siblings. We're also working to help provide for our family income. We're also trying to help make ends meet. And I think it's just being able to empathize with adults and having them understand that, most importantly, aside from students, we're still kids either way. And I think that's what we need to emphasize strongly, that, they understand where we're coming from. They understand the whole confidentiality notion, and just being able to really resonate and have those conversations would really make a huge impact.
And I think too, Zach, it's important to note that we're not talking about just teachers. We're talking about any of our staff members, whether they're on site in the central office, are working in partnership with us. And so we really want to make sure that it's access to anyone that a student feels comfortable with as a champion. And we don't want to limit it just to one particular group or one particular position, because it could be anyone that a student can connect with. And it did come up, what you were talking about, the possibility of an interaction with a champion or being assigned a champion as being something that is taboo or potentially looked down upon. And what we discussed in our input sessions is really needing to be forthright in communication with students and families on what the benefit is of a champion. So not looking at it as a negative, but what benefits a student in having a champion, and how that role can really help them learn how to self-advocate and learn how to have more positive interactions with everyone within the community. And so I think that's what's really important as well. It's just the messaging that we're doing from the site level with our families on how this can be beneficial.
Yeah, I mean, I think that from my perspective, while we need a program that would address any and everybody's needs, a part of what we want to solve is why we have disparity in our treatment of children of color and our population, so that we don't have the same old thing. So that when you look at it, the African American males are being suspended and expelled because they didn't have that support. So it's about some support. And I wasn't thinking about the site piece of it, because I was just a citizen, and I actually was assigned to San Pasquale Academy. And I didn't even know where that was. I'd never heard of it before, but it was a countywide position. So a volunteer assignment. So we might get people eventually who would take on the role of mentoring, being an advocate for students, because ultimately you're able to run interference. You're able to help them to see a bigger picture. And if they do get into trouble, you're there to help make it easier for them. I don't know. I'd like to meet with your group, Zach, just to share more about what I'm talking about. Thank you.
Totally. Yeah.
Well, I very much appreciate this discussion, and thanks so much, Arlene, for giving us your time tonight and sharing with us. And thank you, Nicole and Acacia, on this item. Okay.
President Brewer, before you close the item, I just wanted to echo what you said to Arlene. Your voice tonight, Zach, of course, as a trustee, student voice, you know how important that is. I'm addressing specifically Arlene right now, and I'm really admiring your voice and your agency. We always talk about student voice and agency being so important, and I have great admiration and affection for the way you were able to share and articulate so eloquently this evening, and a lot of gratitude. And I don't know if that was your sister or somebody in the background saying hi to your family too. They should be very proud of you this evening.
Yeah, they are. Thank you. I really do appreciate that. Yeah, that was my sister just peeking out to say hi. She's just here saying, "Oh, look, that's my sister on YouTube." And so
Hello, we say hi to her too.
She's just really happy. But as much as appreciative and thankful I am to be here, it's also really nice getting this all out and having it all kind of bottled in, because it really feels odd that we don't have these opportunities as often as other students do. And it's also I see this kind of as a duty as the oldest in my family because I've been in the district for all 13 years of my life, and I know my sister is going to be in the same position. So yeah, just having the representation and being heard and emphasizing student voices, especially now when it feels like, you know, we have no control over anything that's going on, feels very important, very crucial. And I'm glad that everybody here feels the same way.
Thanks
Thank you,
so much,
Arlene.
Ellen. Thank you. Okay, we will now move on to our second reading, item E3 of the Title I eligibility ranking. Superintendent Martin, do you want to remind us where we're at on this issue?
Yes, thank you, President Barrera. Actually, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Lamont Jackson, as he's been working with our DAC, and we had a first reading. This is a second reading, and when we did the first reading, we talked about wanting to have a path forward that would take into account everything that's happening, including the new changing guidelines that we received along the way. So I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Jackson to present where we are on this. Two items, I think they're going together tonight, E2 and E3.
Great. Thank you so much, President Barrera. And it is in partnership with Superintendent Martin that I present this item, second reading. It is coming to the board for approval. And, you know, I want to frame this with some words that just happened. You know, often when we talk about funding, we often hear we don't have much, and I think we can all agree to that in public education. But I want to lean on what Trustee Patterson said in the previous item. You know, it's not always about how much you have, but it's how you prioritize what you have. And I want to thank this board and thank our superintendent for having the vision to make sure that our schools and our students get what they need without harm. And the board last week set a goal. Superintendent Martin set the expectation, and the staff really responded in a great way. So I want to thank the staff and thank the board for the direction. So what you're going to see tonight is the Title I ranking in schools. Again, this is really driven by our board's clear focus to make sure that in our current context that no school was harmed and that they see the same funding that they received previously under the current context. So the revised proposal is certainly going to show the 21-22 rankings and the allocation of Title I funds based on our 2021 LCFFF percentages that go from 37% and beyond. And again, in designing this, and our superintendent alluded to this, in designing a hold harmless approach, our staff, our finance team utilized the recently released guidance from the Federal Education Department. This was received very late, January 29th, and the extension of the CalPADS deadline, which was received on January 28th. So want to thank staff for really being diligent and being on top of this late in the game. So I want to note a couple of things that for any schools that had an increase in their 2021 percentages of students in poverty, we used the higher 2021 percentages. There are about 54 schools that fell into this category. And I wanted to mention these specifics because it's critical to recognize, again, we use the higher percentage in those cases. For schools that had a decrease in the 2021 percentages, we used their 19-20 percentages, the higher percentage of the two, basically. And there were 82 schools who fell into this category. Another bit of note is there was an increase of amount per student, which went from $437 to $502 per eligible student. Again, thank you to the board and thank you to the staff and thank you to our superintendent who made this a priority because we saw an increase of this year from 15.5 million to 18.6 million that are going to go to students And as Dr. Whitehurst Payne said, we're really trying to close the gap. And while you can't, funding isn't always the solution, but certainly we need to put our money towards our goals. And that's what we're doing here. So I present this item on behalf of our superintendent and our staff based on the goals set forth by the board, and turn it back over to you, President Barrera. If there are any questions, we are here to answer them.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jackson. We have one speaker on this item, and that's Jeff Bennett.
Greetings, board. Thank you for your time and the consideration of this tonight. First and foremost, I want to give my support to the proposed ranking and financing, as well as my appreciation for their staff and their tireless efforts in finding a solution that means that no school has less funding this year than last year amidst these challenging times. As you know, COVID has also disproportionately impacted our Title I students, and this plan ensures that schools have the funding necessary to address some of those challenges. In the past, you may know I have been critical of the formulas used for the ranking. While I still believe the formulas could be improved to ensure consistency and equity year after year, this year the process has not resulted in the inequities that I have expressed concerns over in the past. I understand this year's challenges limited the time to review the rankings and evaluate the alternative options, which may have better long-term effects, but I also appreciate the staff's effort to ensure equity this year, because this is what you are voting on, this year's ranking. I also appreciate the transparency of the staff this year regarding the challenges facing the district. Their pursuit of exceptions to policy and waivers have strongly benefited San Diego schools. Also, knowing the condensed guidelines and timelines, the cabinet level staff reached out personally to DAC leadership, knowing the timeline would limit the feedback. This shows at least the spirit of cooperation, despite the constraints limiting the ideal process. So I'm really just thankful for all the efforts that were put forward, and I'm really supportive of this. I just also want to mention that the always being able to provide more and never have anything go away, part of that is because we've had funds that were able to weren't used last year due to the changes that we were able to put in to make this happen. And next year, we may not be in the situation where that same level of funding is provided. Hopefully additional funding comes, but if not, let's make sure that when we move forward, we find equitable ways to ensure that our Title I students are cared for. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jeff. Okay, we've got a recommendation coming forward from Dr. Jackson and Superintendent Martin. Do we have a
I'll move the item.
Thank you, Trustee Beiser. And we've got a second from Vice President Whitehurst Payne. Any board questions or comments?
E3 and E4 together.
I'm
okay.
sorry.
No, thank you. Go ahead, Dr. Jackson. Yeah.
Thank you. My apologies. Superintendent Martin, you did a great job, and I stumbled off of E4. So thank you, Mr. Bennett. I do want to bring E4 forward as well. These are the supplemental funding funds. The intention behind this is really to support our students to provide additional funding for eligible schools based on the number of students who qualify for Title I school meals, and also the duplicate counts of students following specific criteria. These criteria that we set forth were our multilingual learners, chronically absent students, homeless, low-performing African-American students, and students receiving mental health resources. These are addition to the Title I ranking funds that are in item E3. And while these funds are different, we did use the same federal guidelines and state guidelines. And Mr. Bennett mentioned that, really appreciating the staff for working to figure out a way to hold students harmless, hold schools harmless. I do want to mention a data point that a per pupil factor was used, $114 for each student, identify who meet each of the criteria. And so we are bringing both items, E3 and E4, the Title I ranking in schools and the supplemental funding, Title I supplemental funding, together for approval. Thank you for the reminder, Superintendent Martin, and back over to you, President Barrera.
No,
President Barrera, I'll move both items.
Thank you so much, Trustee Beiser, and seconded by Trustee Whitehurst Payne. And I just, the point that Dr. Jackson just made is so important, and this is a practice that we've been following since the implementation of the local control funding formula. So when our district receives funding from the state under the local control funding formula, they talk about unduplicated counts. So in other words, if we have a student who qualifies for free and reduced lunch, who also happens to be an English learner, and who also might happen, to be a foster student or a homeless student, the state gives us supplemental and concentration funding for that student one time. So it collapses those categories and says, we're going to fund that student one time, even though that student falls into these different categories. What we have done consistently with the supplemental Title I funding is we split that up. And so at a school, if you have a student who happens to be an English learner who qualifies for free and reduced lunch, who's also a homeless student, or the other categories, we will give that school 3 times, the amount of funding for that student. So what that's doing is we are investing more in equitable distribution of resources than under the state formula that comes to districts. And when people talk about and study the progress that our district has made on achieving more equitable outcomes for students over the past several years, one core strategy under Superintendent Martin's leadership has been to not penalize a school because you might have a student that falls into multiple categories, but in fact to realize that that student has multiple needs. And so we're going to therefore provide, that additional funding, and that's the recommendation that Dr. Jackson and Superintendent Martin are bringing with us tonight. So we have, a motion and a second. Any further questions or comments from board members on these 2 items, E3 and E4?
President Barrera.
Yes, Trustee Beiser.
Thank you. I would just like to thank the staff for working really hard to figure out how to fill back the money from these 80+ schools that would otherwise realize a dramatic loss in their funding. And our local schools count on these monies to fill in some of the services and programs they've identified that are effective in supporting their students and their student outcomes. I'd like to thank, Jeff Bennett for his work with the DAC and making sure that they're partnered on the process so that we can get feedback from that advisory group. And so it's, again, we are as a board taking into consideration the recommendation to support this item from a community advisory group. So I'm thrilled to support this initiative, and hopefully we can realize additional funding and full funding from the federal government for IDEA, Title I, Title IX, and all the other supplementals that our student outcomes demonstrate. When you allocate the resources towards the students with the highest need, it makes a difference. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Beiser.
That's it.
Okay, with no further questions or comments, and Trustee Patterson.
Sorry about that, Trustee Barrera. This might just be a question for you, actually. Why haven't we used one of the lower thresholds? So we dropped to 37% this time. There's probably a few schools every year that are like 36 to 39. What was the reason that we don't usually go down to this level? Because we're usually at 40, if I'm correct.
Yeah, it's actually legal requirements to how low we're allowed to go in terms of percentage of students who qualify at a school is set by the federal government. But Dr. Jackson, did you want to comment on that?
Yeah, I think you hit that right, President Barrera, and I would also lean on Tom Liberto if he wants to chime in with any addition. But I think you hit it right there. We have certain criteria that we have to meet.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Dr. Jackson and Trustee Barrera. With the lower, if you go below 40%, that enacts what they call a targeted assistant program. And I spoke a little bit last week about that. That would mean that only students who qualify for Title I on that school campus have access to those dollars or the services provided by those dollars. So there is a state waiver for which we are in the process of applying. We're pretty confident that the state will approve that waiver so that the schools that are qualifying under the 40% this year can continue to operate on what we call a school-wide program. So it is legal at 40. They do give you the option to go below, but there's some factors that then become involved.
Thank you, Tom, and thank you for the question, Trustee Patterson. And Trustee Patterson, would you like to vote on this item, on both these items, E3 and E4?
Yeah, I vote aye on both.
Thank you. And Trustee Bazo?
Aye.
Dr. McQuarrie?
Aye.
Trustee Beiser?
Aye.
Dr. Whitehurst Payne?
Aye.
And Barrera, aye. Great. Thank you so much. And thanks for that incredible work by the staff to turn a very complicated situation into something that allows schools to have some stability going forward. Great, great work. Okay, we will move now to the board consent agenda. And we do have one speaker on item F2, but could we get a motion for items F1 and F2?
So moved.
Second it.
And second by Vice President Whitehurst Payne. And our speaker on item F2 is Casey Zahner.
Hi, thank you.
Go ahead.
Good afternoon. I'm the parent of a child who attends Gage Elementary, and I just want to thank San Diego Unified School District for recognizing the importance of gun violence prevention and working to better inform parents about the safe storage of firearms. As parents, we take steps to keep our children safe. They wear seatbelts in the car, they wear helmets for bike riding, they wear shin guards for soccer, and I feel like the conversation about safe gun storage should be no different from any of these. We're all safer when firearms are stored securely, unloaded, locked, separate from ammunition. We know that 590 children die from gun suicide every year, usually with a family member's gun, and these deaths are preventable when guns are stored securely. During this pandemic, gun sales in California have skyrocketed while students' mental health has suffered, and this is a recipe for disaster. But reminding families about the importance of safely storing firearms is an immediate and concrete way to help keep our children safe during this difficult time. So thank you.
Thank you, Casey. And also Jonah Goldstein. Oh, no, Jonah. Okay. So we've got a motion and a second on both these items. Any board comments or questions? If not, Trustee Patterson?
Aye.
And Dr. McQuarrie?
Aye.
Trustee Beiser?
Enthusiastic, aye.
Thank you, Trustee Beiser. Trustee Bazo?
Aye.
Vice President Whitehurst Payne?
Aye.
And Barrera, aye. Thank you. Okay, we will now move to item G1, and this is our District Advisory Council for Compensatory Education semi-annual update. And we'll turn it over to the DAC Chair, Jeff Bennett.
Greetings, thank you, board. I believe there's a screen share, yep. So if you all see, here's our presentation. This is our update for today. It was developed by our entire DAC executive board, myself, who's the chair, Crystal Troll, our first vice chair, Debbie Hamilton, our second vice chair, and Susie Reed, our team member and ex officio. Next slide. Here's the agenda we have for you today. Happy to tell you we're going to kind of start with some good news and move on to some more good news, and then provide you some actual feedback that we got from some of our DAC membership, and then move into the opportunities and challenges that we identified as part of that process. And then we're going to talk to you about our priorities as an executive board, and then make recommendations to you finally as we close out the presentation. Next slide. So looking here at some of the recent accomplishments, the district expanded the resource teachers from 2 to 6, and that's really critical in the DAC work, because They're key to facilitating improved participation and engagement. They're a key link to in a healthy SSC and DAC relationship because they support the school sites, but they're also a point of contact when a parent has a concern or is confused or needs help with thought out and questions and concerns. Because realize your SSC membership are made up of parents and teachers and community members, and not all of them have the same information that the district staff do. So having points of contact that are knowledgeable and there to assist is extremely helpful in them carrying out those duties. Also, we've been really impressed with the family engagement. They've increased webinars and internet resources, especially during this time. If you haven't had a chance to check out some of the things they're doing during this COVID time as far as their response, it's pretty amazing the walkthroughs and resources they have to ensure that there's still engagement there. Also, we've done breakout sessions to connect with the membership, and we figured out ways to do that with Zoom. And the partnership that we have with this strategic planning for student achievement department of the district has only increased. So we were really happy with the way things are going within the DAC, including the virtual transition to Zoom, which is actually, of all things, has impacted our attendance and participation in a healthy way. So if let's go to the next slide.
Yeah.
And you can see there were some initial decreases transitioning to online meetings and figuring all of those things out, as taking roles and that. But after the initial struggles, we found that the online format has improved DAC attendance each mean, and it's allowed us to get really good response from the district because they're focused on figuring out how to facilitate what we want to do as an executive board to meet the DAC needs. We've had really good help. One of the biggest is figuring out how to get those language and translation services when we wanted to do breakout sessions and figure out how to ensure everyone had a voice and were included. As you can see, we've had a significant increase in participation than we were at pre-COVID. We've seen about a 30% increase. And what we have been hearing is that it provides access. You don't have to worry about transportation, conflicts in timeline. You can be anywhere and still participate. And that's something that our members want to have continue, even when we do go back to having in-person meetings. So we understand that it's not a school board decision as far as some of the rules and regulations that allow for remote type meetings to occur. But those lie with the state and the federal government. But we just want to encourage that because we've seen so much greater participation since that time. And in that participation, I'm going to turn over a portion of this meeting to my first vice chair, Crystal Troll, who's going to share about some of this feedback that we got when we did breakout sessions, specifically around some of the COVID and concerns and things people were facing this year during our December 16th DAC meeting.
Great. Okay, thank you, Jeff. So in our December meeting, we hosted some breakout groups, and we had about 50 schools represented during that time. So we broke them up according to elementary, middle, and high school. And then we facilitated these groups by our DAC leadership. So myself, Jeff, Susie Reed, and Debbie Hamilton, we all kind of participated in this process. And we posed 3 questions. Basically, the questions were, what new needs have you identified and or implemented as a result of COVID? How is COVID affecting your site's SSC plans? And what resources do you need to adjust or address your SSC plans? And we said, besides money, everybody wants more money, but let's think about outside the box with money here. And so the responses really were categorized into 4 areas: students, engagement, financial, and instruction. And so we also had a survey that we allowed folks to participate in. So these responses are a culmination of the small group feedback and the survey responses. So I'm going to go through each one of these categories and just give you a sense of kind of what the DAC reps were saying. So in terms of students, there's a lot of discussion around the needs of students, of course. Things that came up were absenteeism, kind of this lack of student engagement because of cameras being off, not really sure if the students they may be kind of quote unquote there and attended, but are they really present? Are they really, internalizing the instruction, and are they engaging? The lack of socialization opportunities came up, which, wouldn't be a surprise to anybody. Other needs were addressed as, needing more tutoring, help students who are struggling, noticing DNFs in 8th grade, and then supports for students, for parents who are working. Internet and connectivity continues to be kind of an issue for our students. And so the possibility of providing hands-on materials that students can use at home in case, for whatever reason, their connection is not supported. Needing guidance from the district about what does equitable to all students mean in this new virtual environment. So just some more kind of dialogue around that. And some school sites were mentioning that they're really seeing positive results in sending postcards and mailing things to the students, and how much the students really appreciated that kind of interaction. The other category is around engagement. And so some of the, this is probably no surprise, but some of the, needs mentioned were needing more interaction and training. And as much as there are resources available to parents, through the family engagement department and through the different workshops and things, it seems like this is not being communicated as well, because this is still identified as a need. This was the feedback at that time. They just don't know these things are available. So there might be some ways to communicate the resources better. And then conducting parent trainings. Some school sites have mentioned that they're doing restorative practices, as well as, again, as Jeff noted, the advantages of using Zoom for engagement and exploring that further. Another category is around the finances. So, because the work of many SSCs relates to Title I funding, many participants, they said that they're focused on how to use the money they thought they would use in the actual classroom and translate that into the virtual environment. So, a lot of schools mentioned that they're really referring to their SBSA to determine their spending priorities. Some schools have sent surveys to all their stakeholders. A couple of folks mentioned that they needed counselor and guidance assistance, especially in terms of SEL, the social emotional learning. And some schools are using their funds to provide extra teachers and translation resources. But, all in all, a lot of, there were several mentions of just needing more information from the district about what they can and cannot do, kind of funding limitations and expectations as they kind of pivot into filling the needs in the virtual environment and moving forward. The final area was around instruction. So this was an area that a lot of participants spoke about, the need for additional teaching support during this time. It was phase 1 was kind of in the works at that time, and how to roll out the new grading policies. What's that going to look like in terms of benchmarking in the online learning environment, relative to what, how to define improvement, and how to evaluate in an online environment, and needing access to some software and tech licenses was mentioned as well, that may be beyond kind of their ability to do it themselves. But, despite some of the challenges, schools mentioned that this is a great time that they were really focusing on teaching life skills, resiliency and those kinds of things that, you can't necessarily get inside the classroom. And so that was a nice way to kind of make lemonade out of lemons. So that's all for me. I'll turn it back to Jeff, our DAC chair.
Thank you, Crystal. So our next slide kind of overview some of the trends we saw in challenges and opportunities, because wherever there is something that's challenging, that means there's also an opportunity for us to improve in that area, grow, or innovate. And one of the things that we noticed was sometimes there are things the district's doing, but parents and folks who involved may not see it. It might be in a different area that it's going on. It hasn't hit them yet. They just might not be aware of it. Or there's also the chance that maybe it's not being as effective as the district's hoping that it is. And we need to evaluate how can we make it more effective in order to meet the needs that it's trying to meet. So looking at the challenges and opportunities, these are areas that we're seeing as spots for us to talk, discuss, and find solutions around to ensure that some of the things that folks had expressed move forward well. One has always been kind of a historical challenge with the DAC as a body, has been some of the communication, especially involving SSC rosters, getting those things in a timely manner with information so we can get information pushed out. And then if a school doesn't have someone attend, I mean, although we've seen much greater attendance, some of that information that's coming from the DAC meeting isn't making it to those schools' SSCs. And so then how do we ensure that that information that we are getting is making it to the folks who don't have a representative at the meeting, so they can be afforded the same opportunities to understand the information they're voting on and making decisions for their school site. And so that's just an area we'd like to continue to work on. I know that there's going to be some solutions that are going to be suggested by the staff at our next DAC meeting to some of these items, because we've already presented this to the staff, and they're going to be meeting at our actual next DAC meeting to discuss some of their suggestions with them. But that's one. Also, online training. It's a good thing that San Diego Unified puts so much of their information online. Transparency, you hear it from your parents all the time, is really important to maintain accountability, and so people know what's going on. But when it's hard to find that information, and things like, as great it is a website migration, things where you used to know where to find might not be there. So we've talked and found that some website navigation videos help guiding it. Again, I'm going to champion somebody who's doing it well. The FACE department actually has some videos that kind of highlight, hey, here's what's going on. That type of thing in other areas can really help improve the engagement, especially for folks who have different learning modalities. And then looking at the school site spending efficiency as we push, and we think this is great that the board has constantly pushed more and more money directly to the schools so they can make the decisions necessary based on what they're facing. But it's important to then evaluate how that's being effective. Lessons learned. What are the pilot programs? How can one school who has an extremely successful implementation of an intervention share that and get that information to another school who might be dealing with a similar problem? Those are the types of things that the parents and members of the SSC are struggling with when they're looking at, hey, here's our list of goals that we want to achieve with these funds. What's going to be the best way? How are we going to make the most efficient use of that spending? And then the remaining funds that are the central budget funds, the ones that don't go to the schools, working with timeliness to make sure that we get feedback and have the time to go to the DAC reps, to the SSCs, get SSC feedback back to the DAC, then we can provide a recommendation to you, the board, based on that comprehensive process that also involves staff feedback and discussion. So that's an opportunity that we really see, and I think we're on the right track for that this year by some of our efforts that we've done. Then also just we are a large district, and between folks retiring and changes within district staff, it can be very difficult, especially when there's a point of contact, or there's someone you would normally go to and they're not there anymore, and you don't have the right information at the school site level, which has been one of the things that the resource teachers helps mitigate, is when they can help get those answers and take ownership for schools when they have questions. But they're just balancing the facilitation of the school site requirements, as well as when things do change and policies are updated, that those things move on. Getting that balance right is something we see that could help those making the decisions at the school sites. Next slide, please. So understanding the challenges and opportunities we've identified, I want to share with you a little bit of our DAC executive board priorities. The first one being regular communication with cabinet level staff on DAC priorities. This allows that real back and forth feedback to go and finding solutions. So when you are presented with recommendations from us as the DAC, the staff has a way forward to provide a means to what we're trying to achieve, and that is also in line with what the DAC is saying we need. It's not two separate lines of effort, perhaps going slightly different directions, but it's working together and moving forward. And I'm really encouraged by this upcoming meeting where we're going to have a presentation to the DAC as a whole regarding some of the items that we presented on the previous slide. Another key aspect is just the effective and equitable stewardship of these Title I funds. It is one thing to ensure the schools have the funds necessary to make the decisions, and it's another thing to then be constantly looking, okay, here's what we did. Is there a way we can improve? We have limited funds. So how are we using them in the most efficient ways to make the biggest impact for these students? Third is improving engagement and participation. Again, as I mentioned earlier, the ability to do this online has extremely improved that level, which has been good. And we'd like to keep that engagement and participation up. And by listening to the DAC, they really enjoyed the feedback sessions and the breakouts. And then we reported back to the body on, hey, here's what we came up with. Here's what we're going to the board with. We're just keeping that line open. And when you engage people and share with them what's going on, including, which moves me to the next point, the promoting the transparency and accountability, it actually improves the engagement. So those things feed each other. And that's something we want to make sure that we're doing as a DAC. And then the last thing is that identifying and sharing success. When something's going right, let's figure out a way to replicate that. Let's share that. And let's make sure that it's not just happening in one of our schools. Let's allow it to happen in other schools that have similar issues. And so those are our priorities as a board. So understanding our priorities as a board, I'd like to take you to the next slide, which is what are some of our recommendations for you. We would ask you to strongly advocate both the state and the federal legislative bodies to allow hybrid and virtual DAC and SSC meetings post-COVID. I think that given the size of San Diego Unified School District, the influence that we have on innovative solutions to student problems, that a strong advocacy from the board regarding the ability to utilize the virtual tools that now exist will increase engagement. So we ask you as a board to consider being strong advocates in that way. Also, it's almost a more continue. The fact that you guys have supported website overhauls and things like that, that's a step in the right direction, but just continue to provide tools to improve that district website experience. And again, I want to point to what the FACE department is doing as a shining example of a good way to engage with parents. The next item is the focus on publishing consistent guidelines for evaluation and benchmarking of student learning. And this is really stemmed partially out of the lack of standardized test scores we're going to have as school sites to look at. But I mean, scores are just part of the number. We've always looking to understand more than just the score. What does it mean, and what interventions does that require? And looking at finding ways to make sure we're making those consistent decisions is going to be really important this year for that benchmarking, but it will be an additional tool that could be useful even when we have scores to look at. Because again, as I said, it's the SSCs that are making a lot of these decisions on how this money is going to be spent on these school sites to make impact. A lot of us have careers outside of education, and so getting that information and understanding how to apply it is something that's really helpful in making those decisions. And we are, as a DAC, trying to explore some options for increasing qualitative data to make that process easier. And when we come back to our next presentation to share with you, we'd like to update you on what efforts we've achieved with the staff on finding some of those ways to improve some of the qualitative data that we'll have for school sites when making these decisions. And as always, we just want to let you know you're welcome to join us at any of our DAC meetings or any of the SSC meetings. We'd love to have you. There's great things being done, and so you're always welcome. Thank you. Next slide. Again, for your time and for your consideration of the recommendations of the District Advisory Council on Compensatory Education.
All right. Well, thanks so much, Jeff and Crystal. Very, very clear and organized presentation, and you can see the amount of work that you put into this. We have two public speakers on this item, Francisca Salcedo. Oh yeah, Jeff, could you unshare your screen? Thank you. Is Francisca available?
Yes. Hello.
Go ahead, Francisca. Yes.
Oh, thank you. Yes, about 60% of San Diego Unified School District students are low income. About 20% are English learners. There are many foster youth and many are homeless. And I'm sure that if the district probed a little bit further, it would find that the actual rate of homelessness is a lot higher because many families do not consider themselves homeless if they're doubling up, which I know in my community of Logan Heights, many families are doubling up because they cannot afford to pay the rent on their own. And with the pandemic, you will find that more and more families lose their jobs and they will become homeless. The only way to effectively meet the academic and social and emotional needs of these vulnerable students is to reopen the schools in all schools in the district to full-time in-person learning. All the untold public funds and efforts being expended on nice-sounding anti-racism plans will not help these students to be prepared for adulthood if the doors to their schools continue to be closed. These students need intensive in-person, one-on-one, and small group instruction, and all the other resources and supports that can only be provided on site, like sufficiently funded counselors and psychologists, preschool, reading and math specialists, family outreach, vocational education, and job readiness. Thank you.
Thank you, Francisca. And Citizen 6140.
Hi, thank you. This presentation provides feedback and shares recommendations in 4 areas: students, engagement, financial, and instruction. And it's making recommendations and tangible solutions, such as maintaining the Zoom meetings even after the on-site meetings resume, providing tools to improve the district website experience, the need for translation resources, etc. So my main comment is, how will the board incorporate this feedback moving forward? Too often the feedback is presented, but then not acted on. And I'm asking the board to call on the superintendent to take this feedback and bring back a report of the actions the district will take as a result. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, board member questions and comments. Dr. Whitehurst Payne.
Well, I must say that I'm delighted to hear this report. In the sense that if you'll recall, 2 years ago, and then I reiterated it a year ago, I was concerned about the fact that schools in our communities in Richards area, districts E and D, that we were not getting representation. And I even suggested that we look at the video, the Zoom-like event. And then the pandemic comes along and we're forced to do it, and it's working. So I'm delighted that something that we've talked about 2 years ago, 1 year ago, again, is happening and it's working. I'm looking forward to it increasing even, that we'll get even more schools participating in this session. And I also want to commend Lincoln Cluster, Lincoln Committee, because that group of schools, they're working on training their SSCs and sharing with them things about the SSC committees and Title I funds, etc. So I commend them for moving ahead to do that. And I'm looking for an even higher participation rate in the future. That's something that we talked about, but hopefully now we can move forward in doing as they're requesting, which is to advocate. If there's a block there with federal or state, see if we can't unloosen it so that we can go ahead and have sessions that way in a hybrid approach. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice President Whitehurst Payne. Yeah, I think that that concept of video meetings actually goes back about 10 years. So I think this is great to hear, as you said, you know, that we've seen increased participation with video meetings, and that we should definitely, you know, work with Enrique and the superintendent to figure out how to advocate at the state and federal levels to allow that going forward. Other board member comments or questions? Yes, Trustee Patterson.
Thank you, Trustee Barrera. Thank you for bringing up the student engagement aspect with cameras. I think that really is a valid point right now, and talking about, are you there, but are you really there? I know I just see it, just to provide my own student experience. Participation is really at a low in classrooms. There's just a there's a really strong disconnect among, I think across all schools, just in speaking with my advisory board members. There's a strong disconnect in wanting to participate and having that same desire. And I've seen all different methods used. Teachers use clips, they call on people, they do all these different things. And I mean, everything from even when you call on the student, the most frustrating thing, your internet cuts out and then you get all blurred and you can't even talk. Or in my physics class, our teacher has us turn off our cameras when we speak because it's something with broadband width from what I've been told. So it's a little bit dysfunctional. I appreciate them bringing it up. I don't have a solution, but once again, I think that is something that if we can be more supportive of, it is a great thing to look into.
Thank you, Trustee Patterson. Dr. McQuarrie?
Yeah, great. Yeah, I also want to acknowledge Jeff and Crystal for a very comprehensive report and the recommendations. And I look forward to hearing the DAC's suggestions for improving quantitative data. I think it's the quantitative data that tells the story and it gives us the background and the context for our qualitative data. And I think with a better qualitative data, and I think it's the with better qualitative data, we will definitely be making better decisions. So
thank you, Dr. McQuarrie. Other board members? I very much appreciate, Jeff and Crystal, and it's been, the focus of the DAC leadership for many years on this challenge about how do you diversify participation in the DAC and how do we make sure that the DAC is in fact representative of our entire district, and particularly the schools that have the highest percentage of students who qualify for Title I. I'm wondering if, with the maybe the momentum from the additional participation that we're seeing this year, because we're able to have our meetings virtually, I wonder if, Jeff, if you think it would be useful for the DAC with support from the district to put together some sort of strategic plan around diversifying membership. And I would imagine that such a plan would go, at the core level that Vice President Whitehurst Payne is talking about, which is training more parents to participate in the SSCs, to how do you communicate and get the word out about the importance of participating in the DAC, the ability to conduct meetings in the way that you did in December by breaking people into small groups and making sure that there's the translation, and so people really can feel like their participation is meaningful, all of those issues. But I wonder if we could support the DAC in putting together a plan to fully diversify the participation in the membership. I don't know, Jeff, if you had any thoughts about that.
Well, yes, I think we would definitely appreciate any support, any planning together with staff, getting board support for reaching out to the communities and finding out what it would take in the areas where we're seeing lower participation. Part of what we're trying to do as the board is making it so the meetings are running on time, they have valuable data, that we're not wasting people's time, and we have good feedback and a good responsiveness. So I think those are the things that build on themselves when they're working well and tear apart the organization when they're not. And so I think we're on a good track now, but I think that reaching out to some of those communities where they are underrepresented is probably going to be a better way to find out how else we can adjust to meet those needs.
No, I appreciate that. So that maybe that's something that we could ask the superintendent and the staff to work with the DAC on moving forward, really putting together a thoughtful plan to increase diversity and representation. Superintendent, did you have a thought about that?
I was just going to appreciate that you were taking the momentum, and when things are working, that's been a theory of action, that you start with what's working and build off of that.
Yeah.
And so when we're seeing these good positive results, how do we sustain these and build from there? So I think that there's room for a conversation to figure out how you capitalize on it and go forward, keep what we have and grow it.
Great, thank you. And I don't know, Dr. Jackson, did you have any thoughts about that issue as well?
Thank you. Well, I have some thoughts, yes. First, I want to thank Jeff and thanks, Crystal. I look forward to partnering with you, and I've made note of what Superintendent Martin has just said, and I think we need to work with staff and collaborate with this committee on a way forward. So look forward to it. Thank you.
Great. Thanks so much. And again, thanks, Jeff and Crystal and the entire committee for your leadership and your excellent report tonight. Okay, we will move on. Can we get a motion on item G2? We've got a motion from Vice President Whitehurst Payne, and do we have a second? A second from Trustee Bazo. This is a resolution approving the form of and authorizing the execution and delivery of an official statement in connection with the issuance of the San Diego Unified School District 2021 General Obligation Bonds. So it's basically a motion to issue the next series of bonds. So I see Mary Collins is here. I don't know, Mary, if you wanted to comment at all, or Mark? No, okay.
I'd say thank you to Eugene Clark, Mary Collins, our bond counselor here from ORIC, and also Mark Young, our financial advisor from KNN. Thanks for being here tonight while we take this forward. And these bonds are scheduled to be priced and sold on February 17th to the retail market and on February 18th to the institutional market, with the final closing date on March 4th, 2021.
Great, thank you. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any board questions or comments on this item? Okay, if not, Trustee Patterson.
Aye.
Vice President Whitehurst Payne.
Aye.
Dr. McQuarrie.
Aye.
Trustee Bazo.
Aye.
Trustee Beiser.
Aye.
And Barrera, aye. Thank you so much. And good luck with this next issuance. Okay, and could we get a motion on item G3? This is MOUs with AESD and
So moved.
ESEA chapters, moved by Trustee Beiser. And do we have a second? Trustee Bazo, second. Any questions or comments from board members? If not, Trustee Patterson.
I don't think I
Oh, you don't vote on this item. That's right. Sorry about that. Trustee McQuarrie.
Aye.
Trustee Beiser.
Aye.
Trustee Bazo.
Aye.
Vice President Whitehurst Payne.
Aye.
And Barrera, aye. Great. Okay, we will now move to the superintendent's consent agenda. We have speakers.
So moved.
Thank you, Trustee Beiser. And is there a second? Looks like Trustee Patterson. And we've got speakers on items I3, I7, and I10. So why don't we hear from those speakers? For item I3, Crystal Troll.
Well, thank you, President Breyer and the Board of Trustees. As a parent of 3 children in the Claremont cluster, I support Kearney High's plan to host a prom, as it's a specialist celebration. I'm sure the students worked hard to raise the money and will plan a memorable event with the appropriate COVID and other safety measures in place. I believe this event will provide tremendous benefits for students who have felt disconnected from their school community and who have suffered socially, emotionally, mentally as a result of almost a full year of online learning environment. Given that schools will remain closed indefinitely, if this is approved, I ask that the district give the same consideration and support for other schools in our district that wish to plan celebratory events so that there truly is equity. Many schools are waiting for guidance from the district to make promotion related plans. And with the end of the year approaching, I urge the district to provide guidance quickly to allow enough time to raise funds if necessary and make plans to honor and celebrate our students and school communities. I'm sure you would all agree that celebrating our students warrants this attention and support. Thank you.
Thank you, Crystal. And Citizen 6140.
Hi, thank you. Yes, so this is an action item for the paying for the prom at the Westin. And the item is a contract to host 325 seniors for prom at the Westin Hotel. And we support this item. We think that students should have every opportunity to gain some semblance of normalcy over their senior year. However, it goes without saying that the district canceled the PSAT over the concern about large gatherings. The last few comments from the ASB board members, I mean, it is clear that students are getting together and doing things like meeting to watch the sunrise, for example, which was on one of the prior reports. And so I guess the question is it really the position of San Diego Unified that it makes sense for students to do all these activities, but that learning on-site is too dangerous, despite on-site learning being an environment where there are significant safety precautions in place? Thank you.
And Citizen 6140, did you want to also go ahead and comment on items I7 and I10?
Sure, thank you. I'm off mute, right?
Yes, we can hear you. Thanks.
So I7 is for the UCSD testing, and it's a contract to further expand the UCSD testing program. The program provides for PCR testing for every student and staff weekly. And as you know, the California Department of Public Health released guidelines, which sets the testing schedule at 2 weeks, and it allows for both PCR and antigen testing. Antigen tests are much less expensive, and I wanted to know if this contract allows for antigen testing in the future. Is there flexibility if SDUSD decides to move to a 2-week schedule that's in line with CDPH? And then also, could you please share the modeling done by Natasha Martin at UCSD as it relates to elementary school children? Because the only thing that's shared out there right now, sort of to justify this weekly testing, was it done at a university environment when the students were living together and sharing meals. So it would just be great if that could be shared too. And then for I-10, which is the due process payments, these are settlement payments, and I recommend that they be approved. And then I just wanted to let you know that I actually had to take this route with my child. And I wanted to share my experience with the district because it did not begin confrontational. It was friendly and positive, and I even donated like toys to the preschool teacher for my child's site, because like as a parent, all I ever wanted for my children was to have a great school experience. And I just think it's important to hear from parents, because what happens, particularly in the special needs community, is that the parents' experience and knowledge is discounted. And parents are the experts when it comes to our children. So I'd really like that be the attitude that is permeates, right? Because what happens is that the IEP ends up just becoming like this checkbox exercise, and parents really don't have another option except due process. So I was really happy, and it was so positive to see that the Office of Family Engagement held a 2-part series with the Ombudsman Office. And I know they published the slides, but if they could publish perhaps the actual presentation and provide translation, that would be great. And then I also would recommend that the district please track and share the results from this office, because as a parent of a special needs child, I'm really hopeful that there will be more genuine opportunities for parents to be heard, and that in the long term that we can be working together to reduce the need basically to exercise due process in order to help our children. All we want is a good relationship with our child's school, and the confidence that the school is really, sees and helps our kids for the individuals that they are. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we have a motion and a second on the superintendent's consent agenda. Any comments or questions from board members? If not, we will vote. Trustee Patterson?
Aye, with an abstention on I-12.
An abstention on I-12. Thank you, Trustee Patterson. Vice President Whitehurst Payne?
Aye.
Trustee Bazzo?
Aye.
Trustee Beiser?
Aye.
Trustee McQuarrie?
Aye.
And Barrera, aye. Okay, we have several non-agenda public testimony comments, so we're going to limit it to 1 minute apiece. And we do need to enforce that limit so everybody has a chance to speak. So we'll start with Charlotte Tyla. No Charlotte. Lauren Heisted Burrows. No Lauren. Allison Raitt. Go ahead, Allison. Is Allison available? Okay. Allison, do you have an ability to unmute? Okay, we'll try to come back to you, Allison. Courtney Duthie.
Hi.
Hi, Courtney, go ahead.
Hi, I'm a parent of 3 elementary age students in the district, and I'm here to ask if the panel of UCSD experts have modified their reopening recommendations as the county is moving forward with vaccinating more and more people. Offering teachers vaccines before they're expected to return seems fair, but also appears to be above and beyond what many school districts are doing. And parents want to be assured that once teachers are offered the vaccine, there will be accountability on everyone's part to return kids to the classroom, like much of the nation has already done. We need to stop calling the education our students are receiving high quality. My kindergartner is doing school with me alone on our bedroom floor because Zooms are too emotionally overwhelming 100 days into school. Do any of the board members sit in these classes? My children adore their teachers, but the education they're receiving online being called high quality is a gross misrepresentation of what is actually happening in the classrooms. Oftentimes, this is not the fault of our teachers, but of a failed system that refuses to admit how detrimental this is to our kids. Is the district asking teachers if they feel like they're being effective? Is the district talking about the mass exodus of students and
Courtney,
families moving out of the district?
Could you wrap it up, Courtney?
Are they talking about the jobs that are being lost across the board for their teachers once we're back on campus? It's time the districts start to be more transparent, show parents that you have an actual plan for reopening, and then give realistic timelines for implementing these things.
Thank you,
Instill
Courtney. Thanks. Okay, Julie Ducombe? No, Julie. Kristen Bawa? No, Kristen. Nicole Meehan? Lily Higman?
Okay.
Go ahead, Lily. Yes, go ahead.
Oh, good. It worked this time.
Yes.
I would like to request that there is a standing agenda item at every board meeting to give status on the reopening plans. And I think you've heard this more than once tonight. I've been doing some research online, simple Google searches, and many of the other school districts in California give a very detailed opening plan, and they've been updated. Ours has not. I would implore you to go look at San Francisco School District's dashboard. It actually gives so much information. I'm sure we could do something like that. In addition, your announcement this week that close to 200 schools will have learning pods. The latest information says that we have 177 schools. Does that mean every school will have at least one of these learning centers? If so, can you provide some sort of transparency on which schools will get it when? Lastly, the San Francisco School District also has reached a tentative agreement with the unions. I hope that you're working on this and working in the best interest of the kids who are being left behind. Again, an update on the progress would be much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Lily. Appreciate it. Yesenia Dabadine. Yesenia, can you unmute, please? Okay, we'll try to come back. Melissa Aldrich. Is Melissa available?
I'm here.
Okay, go ahead, Melissa.
Okay. I'm a parent of 3 children currently enrolled in virtual learning. I'm here to tell you that this solution is not working. I have had to hire tutors for my 7th and 9th graders simply because their teachers have chosen not to teach their curriculum. My son's 7th grade math teacher will tell the class, Google it when they have a question. This is beyond disappointing. I know this is not only happening to my children. The district has done a big disservice for our kids by not reopening. Not only are our kids' education suffering, but they suffer socially and emotionally as well. So many parents have lost trust and faith in our school system. We do not see change, just another promise broken month after month. Schools have been closed for far too long. Teachers are refusing to teach. The district is refusing to open, and parents are fleeing our public schools in masses, choosing private schools instead. This is going to turn our educational system into the haves and have-nots. There is no promise for equity once this happens. It is time for change. It is time to reopen.
Thank you, Melissa. Crystal Troll.
Hi. Okay. Thank you, President Brewer and the Board of Trustees. As I mentioned before, I'm a parent of 3 children in Claremont Cluster. While the pandemic took us all by surprise, it's been nearly a full year and communication engagement channels haven't really improved, leaving families few options for ongoing, meaningful, two-way dialogue. In October, I submitted public comment about the district's reliance on the San Diego Unified Council PTA survey results that asked for parent feedback about distance learning. At that time, I expressed concerns about equity and that more than, of the 150 San Diego Unified School, more than 150 schools, only 69 of those have PTAs. Last week, the PTA Council deployed another survey asking parents about their plans for current and upcoming school year. So I'm a longtime and current PTA board member at both of my children's schools, and I support the PTA. And although the PTA has an existing relationship with the district, it does not represent all San Diego Unified students and families. And since more than half of the families are part of schools without a PTA presence, once again, they may not be aware of this survey and therefore will not be able to provide feedback. And I have concerns about this approach in relation to equity. So I'm asking the board, you, our elected officials, to ensure that direct two-way dialogue and meaningful engagement with students and families is led by you and our district. Thank you.
Thank you, Crystal. Citizen 6140.
Hi, thank you. I second what Crystal said, but I really wanted to recommend, once again, make the ask that you please move public comment to the front of the meeting. I heard you talk about trying to bring in more parent engagement, and Trustee Whitehurst-Payne, you discussed how important it is, using this online format. Well, the thing is right now, what parents are going through in their house is that they are working, they are teaching their kids, and a lot of times in the evenings, it is all they can do to just finish up the work that they weren't able to do because they were teaching, and everything else that's on the plate in our households right now. And so by having the public testimony at the beginning of the meeting gives us a more set window in which to call in and make ourselves available. And really, if you genuinely cared about having the feedback of parents, listening to your community, everything that we hear you espouse, you would do that. I mean, having it here, it honestly feels quite passive aggressive that you don't want to hear from us. And so you're sort of relegating us to the end. And that is just not right. Thank you.
Thank you, Citizen. Kelly Warner.
Hi, yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, Kelly.
Okay. I'm a parent of 4 children currently enrolled in San Diego Unified, and I was in total support of distance learning at the beginning of the pandemic, but as time drags on and I see other children across the state and nation returning to school and watch my own children struggle to make any progress, I'm now over it. Families, taxpayers like myself are not given a choice. Instead, families are leaving to place their children in private schools, further creating the divide on equal educational opportunities. And families such as my own and many others within the district cannot afford private school. So our children are forced to keep enrolled in a district that is failing to meet their needs, failing to offer a free and appropriate public education, and refusing to put kids first. San Diego Unified has no problem putting adults first, such as the retirement incentive or allowing teachers to volunteer to return to campus to teach children who are currently demonstrating regression or limited progress. My child, who has been invited back on campus, is being instructed by an instructional assistant / substitute teacher rather than a qualified certified teacher. When did it become a choice whether or not to return to your job? And can I say that? I can say that because I'm a teacher and currently teaching a stable group of students on campus and haven't been doing so since October. I went back on campus because I'm a teacher. This is my job and my students need me. There's no doubt in my mind that the substitutes are doing the best they can.
Thank you, Kelly. Can we ask you to wrap it up?
Yes, I'm just asking you to please consider bringing these kids back on campus and meeting their needs.
Okay, thanks very much. Jessica Diaz. No, Jessica, Citizen 6789.
Hi, yeah, it's Jenny Murphy. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, Jenny.
Hi, if I could have like a little bit longer, I was actually supposed to speak in the superintendent's report, and for whatever reason, my audio didn't work. I tried to raise my hand, but
all right, we'll let you go then. Yep.
I'll go quick. Okay.
3 minutes. Yep. Go ahead.
I can appreciate the challenging situation you guys found yourselves in nearly a year ago, and I respected that you were prioritizing following science. However, as this pandemic has continued, the science has advanced, and I've become increasingly disappointed with the lack of communication, transparency, and commitment to actually follow science. We were told months ago that the start date of January 4th would be pushed back. Then we were told that an updated timeline would be communicated on January 13th. At that point, we got a vague email with no real update, only that distance learning would continue indefinitely, but a promise of an update at the end of the month, last month. The end of the month came and went. No updates or timelines for phase 2 have been provided. How can there be no superintendent's report today? I'm quite frankly appalled. I learned from the news and social media that the district met again with UCSD and has been negotiating with the union, but no official communication from the district on this. We've learned so much in the last 11 months, but San Diego Unified has not evolved as the science has. Per the California Department of Public Health, following the scientific guidance of the Harvard Global Health Institute analysis of safe school reopening, once the San Diego case rate is at 25 per 100,000, elementary schools can open. Thankfully, we're close. San Diego is now at 34.2. As I'm sure you're aware, there's a 1-week lag for the case rate calculation, so it's reasonable to expect, based on last week's numbers and the decline this week, we should be able to open elementary schools in about 2 weeks. San Diego is really committed to following science and ready to reopen when it was safe and responsible to do so. As is stated over and over again, elementary schools should be opening at the end of the month. Yet once again, there's no communication to us, and we're in the dark about this. All we've heard about recently is a vague mention of learning labs that will be run by substitute teachers or teachers willing to volunteer. And apparently teachers can actually volunteer to have classroom labs and can bring back up to 14 elementary students, regardless if they are eligible for phase 1. Which students, number of days, etc., is all up to the teacher's discretion. While I'm pleased to see teachers have the choice to come back and bring their students back, as so many want to immediately, it is apparent that this is a setup for huge inequity, like early in phase 1, since it's based on volunteers. The learning and classroom lab model is long overdue, but it is insufficient and most importantly, not in alignment with the current scientific consensus that says schools can and should be open for the option of in-person learning for elementary age children. Again, in a news clip, I saw Trustee Barrera describe how they've been trying to avoid what occurred with the Chicago Public Schools. I would love if San Diego Unified was like the Chicago Public Schools. After they listened to parents, hard negotiations with teachers, following science and focusing on the well-being of children, Chicago Public Schools will have elementary schools open in the next week or two if voting is successful as expected. Or how about New York, the largest school district in our country, urban and diverse and opening up more and more, following the science and guided by the data they are collecting. Speaking of that data, they have implemented a robust testing program that involves weekly random testing. After testing nearly 250,000 students and staff from October to now, the positivity rate is at 0.55% citywide in the schools, even though their current community transition rate is 8%, actually over 8%. However, I'm convinced that no amount of data, best practice examples, or expert guidance would really convince or encourage San Diego Unified to follow the science and open schools. Good leadership is contingent on transparency and communication.
Danny, we'll ask you to wrap it up.
Okay, something that has been so sorely lacking from San Diego Unified that parents have really lost their faith and trust in the district. I hope that communication not only involves providing timely updates, but also listening. Us families do not feel heard.
Thank you, Jenny. Thanks so much. Okay. And now we have some speakers who missed the deadline for the last meeting, but will allow you to speak tonight. Alicia Constant. Oh, Alicia, okay. Can you unmute, Alicia? Okay, we'll come back to you. Nikki DeWinter. No, Nikki. Jeff Richardson. Margot Brogowitz. No, Margot. Gina Oster. Mitz Lee. No Mitz. Noel Wojcicki. Okay, so I think we're going to try to come back to, was it Allison Raitt? Allison, do you have an ability to unmute? Okay, we'll skip to Yesenia Dabadine. Yesenia is no longer present, and I think we were trying Alicia Constant. And Alicia. Okay, Alicia, can you unmute? Okay, well, we appreciate it and we are adjourned.